Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to Let's Start Story on What If Naruto Had Massive Harem with Nefertari Vivi Part 1. So do 4 blue hearts. Comment, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video, and please share with your friends and watch till end. Also check out Patreon, for I have upload Naruto X Rias and Akino uncensored spicy version, link in description. Under the shroud of night on the deck of the Oro Jackson, two men drank together in relative silence for the last time. One of the men was seated on a small stool, immersed in his own thoughts while he drank. However, the man took a pause so he could gaze into his glass and see his reflection off the surface of the sake in his hand. "We've sure come a long way, haven't we?" the man asked, as he noticed his blonde locks have began to fade white and his face began to wrinkle. The second man, who was leaning off of his friend's backside, chuckled, before chugging his alcohol. Then, by removing his lips from the bottle, he made a sound of satisfaction. "Ah, we sure have, Rayleigh," the man agreed, before the two entered a silence once more. Rayleigh gripped hard onto his glass, nearly breaking the fragile cup. It had been a whole year since he last saw his captain and best friend, leaving Rayleigh with so many questions, but so far next to no talking was accomplished. "Roger, you know Rayleigh," the king of pirates began, cutting his friend off. "After we conquered the Grand Line, I asked myself, what other adventures could my life hold? What could I do next?" Rayleigh remained silent, unable to answer his friend's questions. "To be truthful, I didn't know the answer myself. So that is why I left and began to travel on my own," Roger revealed, but left out the most important detail of where he went. "I must have traveled the entire world in my search." Rayleigh couldn't take it anymore, his anger getting the best of him. "Damn it, Roger. Where have you been this past year? Without you the crew fell apart and all that remains now is you and me," Rayleigh shouted in rage, creating large cracks around his feet by using his haki. Roger was unmoved by his vice-captain's outburst. Instead, he began to drink once more. "You truly want to know?" Roger asked in a low and serious voice. Rayleigh nodded. "Yes, I believe that I deserve an explanation," the pirate replied, his anger slowly receding back. "Well, the truth is, I found love. Well, to be more precise, her name is Portgas de Rouge," Roger explained further, before grinning ear to ear. "It's hard to believe, but in a few months' time I will be a father." Rayleigh was taken by surprise, never imagining Roger was going to have a child. "Roger, that's wonderful news, but what if the world government catch wind of your child?" Roger's smile faded and he let loose a sigh. "I would protect my child, but my sickness is growing worse, Rayleigh." The king of pirates took a drink of his sake, before continuing. "Oh, I'm turning myself in, and before you say it, I've already made a plan to keep my child safe." "Roger, you can't do this. If we look hard enough we could find you a cure." "Rayleigh, I didn't come here to discuss false hope," Roger explained, cutting his friend off once more. Rayleigh gritted his teeth. "Then why did you come here?" the vice-captain asked in low and bitter voice. Roger removed his arm off of Rayleigh's back and began to walk. "I wanted to speak with you one last time, and I wanted to leave you with one final order." Roger spoke truthfully, as he gazed of the side of his ship for the last time. "When I'm gone, I want you to find happiness like I have. I want you to have a family and live a happy life. This is my last order as your captain." Rayleigh spun around and looked to his friend with wide eyes. "How can I live a happy life knowing my best friend is dead?" Rayleigh asked, his voice sounding broken and enraged. Roger turned to face Rayleigh and gave the man a wide grin. "I'm not going to die, partner." Day of Roger's execution. Today was the day that the entire world watched, as one man kneeled at the top of an execution platform, located in the heart of his own hometown, which was a decently sized area only a few miles away from Reverse Mountain called Logatown. Many gathered in the town itself and cheered for the death of the Pirate King, while others silently spectated and struggled with the impending death of a close friend. However, there were the few who either refused to watch due to their connections to Roger, or simply because they didn't want to watch, as the world government earned their first and final victory over the Pirate King. Though while all this went on, one Silver's Rayleigh fit into the group of people who were unable to see his friend off the world, thanks to the Marines wanting to capture and execute him as well. To little surprise, Rayleigh wasn't too hurt about his absence at the execution. Who would really like to stand by and watch helplessly? while their best friend is killed before their very eyes. Rayleigh surely wouldn't wish to do so, especially after he and Roger had already said their goodbyes. So instead Dark King chose to spend his day in a manner he found more appropriate. Drinking alone in an empty bar located at Grove 13 of the Sabayati archipelago. More. The former vice captain ordered, while slamming his empty glass onto the counter. The bartender, a middle-aged woman who goes by the name Shaki, sighed. I think you've had enough, Rayleigh-san. The raven-haired beauty advised. Besides our captain wouldn't want for you to be drowning your sorrows away. Rayleigh simply nudged his glass forward. The lectures can come a different time, for now pour the sake. Rayleigh ordered again, tea. This time Shaki complied to his request. Here, just drink then. Shaki spoke with a small hint of irritation, before she retrieved a cigarette and gave it a light. Then by bringing it to her lips she took a deep breath. Before exhaling a cloud of smoke, Rayleigh quickly drank the fresh sake given to him and sighed while closing his eyes. I'm sorry for my rude behavior, Shaki. The Dark King apologized, before the bar fell silent. Shaki opened her mouth to speak, but was stopped by the abrupt sound of the bar door slamming open. Shaki-chan, I'm back, a loud and cheery voice announced. Ailey shifted his gaze over his shoulder and was left speechless by the new arrival. A woman, to be more accurate, who was dressed in a dark orange jacket with a high collar. Her midsection was left exposed, however. Due to the size of the jacket, the Dark King blushed as he watched the woman's hips swing as she approached the counter. Just like her jacket, the woman had even less clothes below her belt line. Since the only other item of clothing she had were very tight black shorts, which were held together with a white belt. However, the woman's beauty didn't stop at her body. No, her face was that of an angel. With beautiful creamy white skin and long cascading red hair. Which Rayleigh had to admit he thought was gorgeous, but also familiar at the same time. Shaki looked between the new arrival and sighed. What are you doing here, Kushina? The barkeep asked, her voice not sounding thrilled about Kushina's arrival. I thought you went off to watch the execution. Kushina's face twisted into a frown. You wouldn't believe how many people are gathered in the square right now. It's ridiculous, and they are all there for what? To see a broadcast of a single man being executed. The red-haired beauty rambled while taking a seat by Rayleigh. It makes me sick, to be honest. I told you earlier that you would get upset, but you refused to listen to me. Shaki replied, while handing Kushina a drink. Here, it's on the house. Kushina accepted the drink. Thank you, Shaki-chan. Kushina spoke with gratitude, before bringing the glass to her lips and drinking all the contents. But I know you were right. Shaki cocked a grin and looked over to Rayleigh, who unsurprisingly hasn't shifted his vision off Kushina since she entered the bar. You should know better than anyone, Kushina, I'm always right. The raven-haired woman spoke cockily, causing Kushina to growl. Stuff it, Shaki-chan, I'm still pretty upset over Roger's execution. Kushina revealed, piquing Rayleigh's interest of the woman even further. I never got to thank him. Why did you want to thank the captain? Rayleigh asked, earning himself the full attention of the red-haired beauty. Causing his face to turn red in embarrassment. Captain, you were a part of Roger's crew? Kushina asked with a small hint of astonishment. Rayleigh nodded to both questions. Yes, in fact I was Roger's former vice-captain. Perhaps you've heard of the famous Dark King, Silver's Rayleigh. The pirate spoke proudly, using his fame to build his confidence while talking to Kushina. Amazing, I never thought I'd run into such a famous pirate in a dump like this. Kushina spoke in awe, while causing Shaki's eyebrow to twitch. A dump, the barkeep mumbled under her breath. I'm really not all that great. Rayleigh spoke humbly, while rubbing the back of his head awkwardly. Though I'm still curious as to why you wanted to thank the captain. Kushina made a toothy grin that made Rayleigh's heartbeat increase. Well, I wanted to thank him for watching over my little brother and letting him travel with you. The red-haired beauty explained to the Dark King. Oh, so your brother was a member of the crew, may I ask what his name was? Rayleigh asked, thinking he most likely shared many adventures with Kushina's brother. His name is Shanks, Uzumaki D. Shanks, Kushina revealed, while giving Rayleigh another grin. Rayleigh began to laugh to himself. Shanks, our little cabin boy, is your little brother. Rayleigh shouted loudly, using his hand to slap the bar counter. Now that you mention it, I see the resemblance in your hair color and facial features. Quote. Kushina joined in on Rayleigh's laughter and threw her head back from laughing. You know Rayleigh-san, you must tell me all the stories and trouble my baka if a brother got in. Kushina laughed out, causing Rayleigh to nod. Don't worry Kushi-chan, I have plenty to share. Rayleigh laughed out with a wide grin, before stopping and looking to the smiling woman and realizing something. Even though today was the day he lost his best friend, Rayleigh was having fun and laughing. Is this the happiness the captain wanted for me? Rayleigh pondered in his own thoughts, while picturing himself spending even more time with his new red-haired acquaintance. A few years later. It's been a few years after Rayleigh and Kushina had met in Shaki's bar. And since then, the ex-pirate and red-haired beauty had fallen in love. Though love has its struggles, especially love between a beautiful woman and one of the most notorious pirates alive. So when the duo married, few were there to witness the joining of the two lovers. However, this didn't bother Rayleigh or Kushina. They didn't want their wedding to be some grand spectacle, but Rayleigh thought it would be nice if the Marines would cease their pursuit on him. That way he could raise his family in absolute peace. Speaking of family though, Rayleigh and Kushina gave birth to a single child. A son by the name of Silver's D. Naruto, who was his father's pride and his mother's joy. However, due to Rayleigh being the Dark Prince, they often left the D out of Naruto's name. This was to protect Naruto, as being a member of the D lineage and the son of a notorious pirate could paint a large target on the boy's back. Naruto himself was very energetic like his mother, but was also incredibly intelligent like his father. Already understanding many things about the world, both good and bad. Like the slave trade on the Sabayati archipelago for example. A subject which enraged Naruto beyond comprehension. Since the small 8-year-old believed trading off another living creature for money was sickening. He even often asked his father to put a stop to the trade, but his father said the life of a prisoners isn't worth risking his family's. Naruto knew his father was right, but that didn't mean he couldn't pull some innocent pranks on the slave traders. These pranks were something that were famous on the Sabayati archipelago, and Kushina and Rayleigh both were fine with them. Just as long as Naruto kept his distance from the celestial dragons. With this one rule which Naruto complied to. Much to his distaste since he hated the celestial dragons. The blonde would cause havoc with his pranks and would never get caught. Though to be fair, Naruto was trained by his father at an early age to control the monumental amount of haki he possessed. So this alone made Naruto incredibly dangerous as not only a prankster, but as a fighter also. However, today the blonde wasn't accomplishing any pranking. Instead he was cooped up in Shaki's bar, since today was his 8th birthday and his family had a surprise for him. Aunt Shaki. Naruto called out from a bar stool. Where are they at? Shish. Aki giggled while approaching the bar counter. Over the years she had remained friends with Rayleigh and Kushina. To such a degree where she became Naruto's surrogate aunt. They are meeting up with someone special. Then they will be here shortly, Naruto-chan. Shaki replied, before placing a glass of juice in front of the small blonde. For now just drink. Okay auntie, thank you. Naruto spoke respectfully, before bringing the glass to his mouth. While the blonde drank, the door to the bar slowly creaked open. Followed by a loud laughter from a familiar voice. Naruto, you baby, you haven't changed a bit. Look at you. You're still drinking juice like a little kid. Naruto instantly stopped and threw his glass towards the voice. Damn you Uncle Shanks, the blonde cried in anger, as he looked over to his uncle who was flanked by both the blonde's parents. Shanks moved his head to the side and chuckled as the glass passed by his face. Oh my bad, I came here all the way from the East Blue to see my nephew and give him this. Shanks revealed while shaking the wooden chest, which was tucked between his arm. Is that for me? Naruto shouted loudly, leaping off the bar stool. However, the blonde quickly froze when he got a clear look at his uncle. Uncle Shanks, your arm. Shanks looked to the empty space, where his arm used to reside. Oh, so you noticed, it's nothing serious. The red-haired pirate explained, but was suddenly struck over the head by his sister. Baka, you lost an arm. I don't care if you saved some child from dying. Kushina scolded, still upset with her younger sibling. Especially after he continued to act so casually about losing a limb. Now Kushina-chan cut him a break, he lost an arm. Don't knock his head off as well. Rayleigh spoke up, defending his old cabin boy. Besides, from what I hear, there is something special about that East Blue child. Shanks smiled. He and Rayleigh had already spoke about Luffy and the boy's resemblance to Roger. You know, let's not dwell on the past for too long. Shanks spoke up, while walking slowly over to a table. Let me show my favorite nephew his present. The man added in, placing the chest down. Naruto ran excited over to his uncle's side and waited impatiently for him to open the box. Oh, what is it? A dagger, or maybe it's full of treasure from the new world. Naruto shouted loudly, while jumping onto a chair, so he could be eye level with the chest. Hey, calm down, Naruto. Shanks chuckled, his hand resting over top the chest. This gift comes with a story first off. Naruto deflated from his uncle's words. I don't wanna wait for some boring story. The blonde mumbled and was quickly struck over the head. Be respectful to your uncle. Kushina roared loudly, causing her little brother to laugh. And you? Kushina growled before striking Shanks over the head. Act your age, you don't know how many children you influence. Both Naruto and his uncle rubbed their throbbing heads and moaned in pain. Ka-chan, nay-chan, that hurt. The two males whined in unison. Kushina held her fist out. Damn right it hurt, and if you want some more I'd love to help you out. The red-haired mother threatened, causing her husband to laugh. Kushi-chan, relax, you know they never change. Rayleigh pointed out, as he walked over to Naruto and brought his son into a headlock. Especially this guy, he's as stubborn as his old man. Naruto giggled while fighting his father's hold. Tu-chan, cut it out already. The blonde ordered in an embarrassed voice. Alright Naruto, I'll give you a break. The proud father replied, releasing his grip and smiling ear to ear. Why don't we see what your uncle got you? Naruto nodded and quickly looked to his uncle, who merely chuckled as he opened the chest. Well, if you wanna know so bad, Naruto, I have to explain a few things first off. The red-haired uncle began, before digging into the chest. You see, me and my crew came across two special fruit, but unfortunately we lost one by accident. Shanks chuckled awkwardly, thinking of Luffy. However, I made sure to save this one for you. Naruto raised an eyebrow in curiosity, as he watched his uncle with great interest. A devil fruit. The blonde mumbled in confusion, while he inspected the dark green peach his uncle held within his hand. Oh, so I take it you've heard about them. Shanks stated in a matter-of-fact tone, before tossing the fruit to his nephew. They are quite rare and powerful, but as you may know, devil fruits also carry a heavy price for the individual who eats one. Yeah, if I eat this, I wouldn't be able to swim. Naruto replied, as he gazed into the fruit in some kind of trance-like state. What's this if you eat it? Kushina roared in anger, her hair swinging wildly behind her. There is no way in hell I'm letting you eat a devil fruit. Ane-chan, at least let Naruto decide. Shanks begged, before he was suddenly stuck over the head once more. I've already decided, Kushina yelled, showing she wasn't backing off her choice. Shanks rubbed his head in pain. Damn, I still haven't met someone who punches harder than you, Kushina. The younger sibling mumbled lowly, before looking up to his old crewmate. Rayleigh, why don't you talk some sense into her? Rayleigh looked past the two bickering siblings and sighed while rubbing his closed eyes. Why would I? Nothing can be changed now. The Dark King replied, causing Kushina to smile and Shanks to deflate. Because he already ate the fruit. What? The red-haired siblings shouted in unison, looking over to the blonde-haired child holding his throat. Uncle Shanks, you didn't tell me this fruit would taste like shit. Naruto cried out, trying his hardest to survive the horrible taste that engulfed his taste buds. Kushina rushed over to her son and grabbed him by the ankles. Then by hoisting him into the air, she began to shake him up and down. Hurry and spit that fruit out right now, the red-haired mother demanded. But midway through her shaking, somehow her son managed to pass through her fingers. What the hell? Well, isn't that interesting? Shaki commented, while watching the entire scene unfold before her. Naruto groaned in pain and rose to his feet. Ka-chan, why would you drop me? The small child asked, looking up to his mother in confusion, who was doing nothing but gazing down on him with a gaping mouth. Rayleigh watched the interaction between his wife and son with a small smirk. Shanks, what was the name of the fruit you gave Naruto? The father asked, while trying to talk. K his best guess at what new powers his son held. Shanks smiled at the retired pirate. Well, it's called the K's no Mi, a Logia-type devil fruit. The red-haired pirate explained before finding himself in a headlock. Shanks, you baka. Why would you give my son a devil fruit? The enraged mother shouted loudly at her sibling. Rayleigh laughed while walking past his wife, who was busy choking out the famous red-haired Shanks. So Naruto, how do you feel? Any pain or weird feelings? Rayleigh asked, bending down so he could be eye level with his son. Naruto held his hand up to inspect with his own eyes. No, Two-chan, I don't feel any different. The blonde child admitted truthfully, causing his father to nod. That's expected, you'll grow used to your new body in time. The Dark King explained while pushing his hand straight through his son's chest. You're a wind man now, but don't worry, I will help you train your new body. The new Logia user looked down to his chest, or to be more precise the empty void of space, where his father's arm was sticking straight through. This is the best birthday ever. Naruto shouted loudly, causing Shaki, Rayleigh and even Shanks to chuckle. Kushina, however, was still a little upset and worried over her only child. I can become even stronger now and become an amazing pirate like Two-chan and Uncle Shanks. Shanks smiled and broke out of his sister's hold. Oh, are you going to set sail and try to beat me on the road of becoming Pirate King? The older male asked, wanting to hear the reply his nephew had. Pirate King. Naruto mumbled the title in confusion, before giving a wide smile. I could care less about some silly title, I just want to be a plain old pirate. Shanks blinked while looking at the small blonde, whose father merely laughed to himself. I don't get it, so you just want treasure? Shanks asked, wanting to under his nephew's reasons for wanting to become a pirate. No way, I'm not interested in treasure, Naruto proclaimed, stunning his uncle and earning the attention of his mother and surrogate aunt. I just want to make new friends and have a grand pirate adventure. Shanks formed a small smile. Naruto's response wasn't like his own. Hell, it wasn't even something the blonde's father would have said. That's a unique answer, Naruto, I like it, Shanks admitted, before walking over and ruffling his nephew's hair. I'm sure you won't only have your adventure, but you'll also become an amazing pirate. Naruto grinned ear to ear, looking up to his uncle. Thanks, Uncle Shanks, for the compliment and the present. The young blonde spoke respectively, causing his uncle to wave him off. Don't worry about it, Naruto, but I have to ask. Would you like to start your pirate adventure early and travel with my crew? Shanks asked, again testing his nephew with his question. Naruto, you absolutely will not be. Hell no, Naruto shouted, cutting his mother off and giving his uncle a look of determination. I'm going to get much stronger. Then I'm going to make a crew of my own. Then after that I'll become the infamous Silver's Naruto, Dark Prince of the Seas. Oh, and how will you become stronger? The red-haired man asked, looking straight at the blonde with an emotionless face. Two-san has already trained me to use all forms of haki, and now that I've eaten a devil fruit, I'll become even stronger than you, Naruto proclaimed, with nothing but pure confidence. Shaki chuckled at her surrogate nephew's claim, while lighting a cigarette. I believe you can do it, Naru-chan. The raven-haired beauty spoke up, before taking a puff from her cigarette. I think he can too, Kushina added in, walking over to her family and smiling. My little baby will become the strongest pirate in history. Well, become that great, you'll have to become really strong, Naruto, Shanks explained in all seriousness. You may find out that your haki and devil fruit powers won't be enough. What are you talking about, Uncle Shanks? Naruto shouted loudly, his anger resembling that of his mother's. I'll be so strong when I master the K's no Mi, that Marines will run by the mere mention of my name. Your uncle is right, Naruto. Rayleigh spoke up, rising to his feet and walking over to the bar counter. If you truly want to become strong, you're going to need a large variety in your arsenal. Shaki LKED to where she was standing across her friend. I take this as my cue. The barkeep mumbled, before bending over and grabbing something. Here you go, Rayleigh. Rayleigh accepted the large rectangular box, which was hidden behind the counter. Thank you, Shaki. The aged father spoke sincerely, before turning to his son. This is from your mother and I. Naruto quickly jumped to his feet and scurried over to his father. Thank you, Two-chan. The blonde yelled happily, taking the box from his father. Ahem. Kushina fake coughed, trying to grab her son's attention. Oh, and thank you too, Ka-chan. The blonde added in, while already begging to rip the large box open. Making short work of the wrapping around it, Naruto lifted the top of the box open. A katana. Rayleigh smiled with pride as he watched his son lift out the sword he and his wife had purchased for him. The sheath and the grip were both blood red, while the guard was made of pure gold. However, when Naruto pulled the blade out, he was confused by its blackish coloring. I can see you're a little confused by your new weapon. You see, the blade is infused with the one material that is deadly to devil fruit users. An incredibly rare material called kairoseki. Rayleigh explained to his son. So with that being said, tomorrow we will begin practicing your sword play. Naruto lit up with excitement at the prospect of more training. Really too-chan. I can't wait, I'm going to be really strong now. The blonde yelled excitedly, before looking down to his new weapon. But I have a question, what is the name of this sword? The sword has no name. Kushina answered, bringing her hands to her hips. So you get to name it. Ah, really, Ka-chan? Naruto shouted in excitement. Your mother is telling the truth, Naruto. His sword has never seen any form of combat. Since you are the very first person to wield it. Rayleigh explained, giving the background on the katana. Shanks crossed his arms and looked over the sword with a critical eye. This is odd. If what you say is true. Because I can definitely sense a strong presence coming from that sword. The one-armed pirate captain analyzed. I agree, that sword will make a great companion for Naru-chan. Shaki pointed out, giving the blonde and his new sword a smile. That it will, Shaki, but tell me, Naruto. What name will you give that sword? Rayleigh asked, curious as to what his son could come up with. Or will you not name it? Naruto looked around the small bar, stopping to look at each individual of his family. Finally coming to a stop when he looked at his new katana. I'm going to call it Kurama. Naruto revealed with a cheeky grin. Pretty cool name, don't you think? I think it's a wonderful name for a sword, Naru-chan. Shaki praised, causing the blonde to blush. Thank you, Auntie Shaki. Naruto thanked respectively, before he felt a hard slap against his back. I think it's a perfect name for a baby swordsman. Shanks added in with a loud laugh. Damn you, Uncle Shanks. Naruto shouted in anger, flailing his arms and new sword into the air. Oh ha ha ha. Rayleigh laughed loudly, greatly amused by his son and brother-in-law's antics. Coo. Sheena quickly brought her hand to her mouth, so she could stifle her laughter. However, her son caught a glimpse of her and her husband's actions. Tu-chan. Ka-chan. Why the hell are you two laughing too? The blonde child cried in rage. This isn't funny. Naru-chan, you're too adorable. Kushina laughed loudly, finding her son's anger more cute and humorous. Naruto brought his hand into a fist and shook with rage. Just you all wait. I'll become a famous pirate that no one will ever laugh at. Naruto proclaimed, looking down to his katana. Me and Kurama are gonna turn the world upside down. I'm sure you will, Naruto. Rayleigh spoke proudly, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. You're the Dark Prince after all. It's been 4 years since Naruto had obtained his devil fruit abilities. By eating the K's no mi, and to say the blonde had made progress was an understatement. In fact, Naruto had nearly mastered every aspect of his fruit's abilities. Thanks to his father's rigorous training, Naruto has been able to accomplish amazing feats. For example, Naruto could turn his body completely invisible, an ability which made his pranking much easier. Though even more impressive was his newfound ability to fly, a skill which he would constantly boast about, saying things such as who needs to swim when you can fly. However, flight and invisibility weren't the extent of the K's no mi. In fact, Naruto had managed to learn how to craft powerful gusts of wind, which were sharper than any blade. These wind attacks were powerful, but Naruto still had developed one skill more deadly than the rest. An attack that Naruto discovered completely by accident while training one day. This was the skill to drain all the oxygen out of an area around him, suffocating all that would be within his range. His father had labeled this attack as too dangerous for training, only to be used should Naruto need to kill his opponent. Naruto was a little upset at first, thinking his father's rule would hinder the growth of his K's no mi, but eventually he gave in. Besides, Naruto also had to focus on his swordsmanship, an area of practice that his father took more serious than anything else. Rayleigh was such a stickler for Naruto's sword progression that the blonde grew very talented with his sword at a very rapid pace. This was mainly due to the fact that Rayleigh wanted Naruto to be exceptionally strong. Mostly because he knew his son's ambition to be a pirate, which was a dangerous lifestyle. Plus, if anyone ever discovered Naruto was his son, along with the rest of his heritage, things would be much worse for him than any normal pirate. For now, however, Naruto wouldn't be setting sail for a long time. Kushina had made it very clear that her son must be at least 17 before he could begin his travels. So for now, Naruto was stuck in the same boring Sabayati archipelago, where he has spent his entire life. Doing the same routine day in and day out. Train with his father Rayleigh in the mornings. Then in the afternoons he would study basic knowledge of the world with Kushina. He would cover mostly dull subjects like world history, navigation, laws of the world, and also touch up on his reading and writing skills. Though not surprising enough, Naruto excelled greatly in everything he did, which made Kushina very happy, always going on about how great of a teacher she was. Regardless that the only reason Naruto did so well was because he was a flat-out genius. Though currently Naruto's routine was shifted off balance. His father had departed to a far-off island to gather supplies, while Naruto was left on the Sabayati archipelago with Kushina. This unfortunately meant no training for Naruto, but his mother was also kind enough to cancel their lessons for a few days. In exchange, however, Naruto had to stand in for Rayleigh by helping his mother with an assortment of chores. This being the reason for the blonde dragging a large number of shopping bags, which were suspended in the air by bubbles. "Ka-chan, are we done shopping yet?" Naruto whined, causing his mother's head to slowly turn around. Kushina eyed her son with a critical eye, her motherly gaze causing him to shudder. "Don't complain, Naru-chan, we are almost done. Besides, I know you're wanting to run off, so you can play with that little mermaid friend of yours," Kushina added in with a sigh. Then by crossing her arms she began to walk off. "All you two ever do is get into trouble. But Ka-chan, it's not Kami's fault, people are always trying to capture her." Naruto shouted back, defending his friend. "Yes, I know, Naru-chan, but that doesn't mean you have to nearly kill everyone who attempts to take her," Kushina replied casually, holding a single finger into the air and waving it back and forth. "Honestly, if you would behave once in a while, I wouldn't place so many rules on you. Like how you're forbidden from carrying Kurama around with you. Oi tilde. It's not my fault that pirate had it coming," Naruto shouted in his own defense this time. Kushina whipped her head around and growled. "He called you a snot-nosed brat, and what do? You sliced his arm off and tossed him into the ocean. And don't forget, he also threatened to rob Aunt Shaki," Naruto added in, placing his argument against his mother. "He had it coming. That doesn't matter." "Yes it does." "No it doesn't. It's totally does." Onlookers passed by the arguing mother and son pair with sweat drops. The two had taken up the entire street as their argument continued. "That doesn't excu. Say you for nearly killing someone, Naruto," Kushina finally yelled at the top of her lungs. "Two-chan said it was okay," Naruto interjected casually, earning a fist to the head. "OWWWW, what the hell?" Quote, "Your two-san is an idiot and I'll be damned you turn out like him," Kushina replied loudly. However, her voice suddenly went very quiet. "Though you already act just like him." "What did you say, Ka-chan?" Naruto asked, as he was unable to hear the last part. Kushina huffed in annoyance, her son was too much like his father for her tastes. "You know what? I'm not arguing with my 12-year-old son, if he should be cutting people's arms off. So let's get the rest of my shopping done." "Alright Ka-chan, just lead the way," Naruto replied with gusto, slowly beginning to walk forward. The two continued in relevant silence. Naruto was busy observing the streets for some potential pranks, while Kushina's eyes drifted around every which way, until she spotted a very familiar wanted poster. Smirking as she recognized the face, Kushina looked down to her son and tapped his shoulder. "You know Naru-chan, I talked with your uncle a few days ago." The mother revealed and snickered as she watched the boy's eyes lighten up. "Ah really? Where is Uncle Shanks at right now? Is he still in the New World or has he decided to come back and visit?" Naruto asked each question right after one another, causing his mother to raise a hand to halt him. "Yes really, he called and informed me that he got another increase in his bounty." That's all he said. Kushina grumbled in annoyance. She was a protective older sister who hated when Shanks would share every bit of information besides his well-being. He's such a baka. No way Ka-chan, Uncle Shanks is the best. I can't wait to become a great pirate like him and Tusan. Naruto shouted happily, causing his mother to laugh. Sorry you are not becoming a famous pirate for a long time. So for now you're just gonna have to be my little Naru-chan. Kushina teased, ruffling her son's spiky blonde hair. Naruto retreated back from his mother's public display of affection. Ka-chan, don't do that. People will never take me serious if you treat me like that. Naruto mumbled in embarrassment. Kushina brought her hands to her hips and pouted. Naruto used to never care when she would show her affection in public. Though as he got older, Kushina quickly realized that he was starting to set himself off and trying to act more mature. Please, I'm your mother and I will treat you however I see fit. So why don't you just learn to accept it? Kushina spoke with a smile plastered on her face. She wasn't going to give in any time soon. Naruto hunched over and released a small sigh. He knew arguing against his mother could be damn near impossible sometimes. Hell, his father and uncle have still to this day never won an argument against her. Alright Ka-chan, whatever you say, but I have a question. How long will Tusan be gone? Naruto asked, casing Kushina to bring a finger to her lip. I really want to start training with him again soon. Well Naru-chan, it's a 2-month travel by boat, but since your baka of a Tusan wanted to swim to the island and catch a boat on the way back, my guess would be about 3.5 months, 4 at the most. Kushina answered truthfully, her attention slowly moving off her son. Oh, that's great Ka-chan. I can't wait till he gets back. I have a new idea for my K's no mi. And I feel like I need to improve my hockey some more. Naruto admitted, but frowned as he noticed Kushina looking off into the distance. Ka-chan, what are you looking at? The blonde quickly asked, moving his eyes to where his mother was looking. Instantly turning red with anger, Naruto saw a sea of townsfolk parted in half. Though it wasn't the townspeople that enraged Naruto, no, it was the 2 oddly dressed men riding 2 other humans, like they were some kind of horse. Celestial dragons. Naruto hissed under his breath. Kushina wasted no time grabbing her son and jerking him to the side of the street. Then by placing a hand onto his head, she forced him onto his knees. Remember the rule me and your Tusan told you. No matter what these men do or how mad they make you, you are absolutely forbidden from attacking them. Kushina reiterated in a low voice, while placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Attacking pirates are one thing, but attacking someone like this is just suicide. Naruto bit the bottom of his lip. He had always obeyed his mother and father's rule. Though he has saw personally what these men are capable of, causing him to fear for his family, mainly his mother. She wasn't as strong as Naruto or Rayleigh. Alright Ka-chan, I understand. Naruto mumbled in a low voice, flinching as he heard the gasps of pain from the approaching slaves. Good, just don't make eye contact, hopefully they will pass on and leave us be. Kushina replied in a low voice. Move faster, you annoying shit. One of the celestial dragons shouted loudly, followed by the sound of a whip cracking. Naruto let loose a low and silent growl, his arms subconsciously turning into wind. Now son, be gentle on the slave. Unless you actually feel like walking on the filthy ground like a commoner. The voice of the second dragon spoke up, before unleashing an obnoxious laughter. Naruto looked slightly up, so he could observe the men passing by. The eldest, who spoke moments ago, was a large and portly man, with rosy red cheeks and dirty brown hair. His face resembled that of a rat, thanks to his large front teeth, small eyes and triangular-shaped head. The second man, who Naruto presumed was his son, resembled a younger and slimmer version of the father, but not too slim. Suddenly Naruto's eyes grew wide as he watched the salve topple over, causing the son to roll across the ground. You stupid bastard! The son yelled, jumping to his feet and pulling out a golden pistol. A slave who cannot serve his master is better off dead. Please, I beg. Bang! A woman's scream went off in horror, while a pool of blood began to gather around the slave's head. Naruto began to shake in rage, something his mother caught onto. So to calm the devil fruit user, Kushina gave his shoulder a squeeze. However, her efforts to keep a low profile were about to suddenly vanish. Oh well, look here, what a beauty. The son spoke up, leisurely looking down at Kushina. You can be my seventh wife. I've recently grown bored of 2 through 5. The second man made a chuckle, but did not speak. Kushina remained silent, refusing to raise her head. Maybe he wasn't talking to her. Or so the red-haired beauty thought. No hoped. Look at me when I address you, worm. The man shouted, grabbing onto Kushina's jaw and lifting her head up. I am the great Saint Kozan and you will respect me. So pronounce your undying love and loyalty to me. This is an order from your husband. Kushina moved her head to the side, still refusing to speak. She was in a hopeless situation. Why you bitch? Kozan yelled loudly, smacking the butt of his pistol against Kushina's forehead. Ah! Kushina cried in pain, falling to her side and holding her head. Praying she wasn't bleeding, and if she was, Kushina at least hoped Naruto wouldn't notice. You stupid bitch! Kozan roared, kicking the downed mother with great repetition. How dare you ignore me? Kushina remained silent, hoping the man would stop. Because if he didn't, the red-haired beauty knew what her son would do. Please Naruto-chan, remember what I told you. Look away and keep your anger under control. Kushina thought to herself, as Kozan finally stopped his onslaught. Have you learned your lesson yet? Kozan asked, rearing his foot back, setting himself up for another strike, waiting on the woman to speak. However, Kushina didn't reply. Her son was the one to speak up instead. Ka-chan, you're bleeding. Naruto droned in a low, lifeless voice. His eyes focused on the red liquid pouring through Kushina's fingers. Shit. Kushina mentally cursed to herself. Things were going wrong very quickly. And now they were only going to get worse. Ka-chan. Kozan mumbled, looking to Naruto with disgust. So this bitch has a child. Well, we can't have any of that. Kozan held his gun right to Naruto's temple and smirked. Life is rough, kid, too bad yours is going to be cut short. The celestial dragon mumbled darkly, slowly pulling the trigger. Bang! The arrogant man smiled wide, but his smile instantly dropped. Naruto let out a smirk of his own, as the bullet passed through his body. Then by grabbing the man's shirt, Naruto turned his left fist completely black. Let's see how much you bleed. Naruto shouted in rage, thrusting his hockey-covered fist into the man's face, shattering his helmet and sending him flying into an adjacent building. The other celestial dragon jerked his head over to where his son was sent flying. Then he looked over to Naruto and grinned. So that boy's a Logia devil fruit eater. A rather rare specimen to have for a slave, considering capturing one is very difficult. The elder noble spoke out to himself, showing the lack of care he had for his son. Sakazuki, I know you are still ordered to watch over us. Come out and capture this boy for me. Naruto looked towards the man with anger, still upset over his mother's injuries. However, now this man was spouting some nonsense about making him a slave. Naruto wasn't going to let that happen by any means. Though the blonde suddenly looked to his left, a powerful presence grabbing his attention. Are you positive, Kaden? He did attack your son, and by doing so he broke a couple laws. And you know how I feel about lawbreakers. The voice of the newly arrived Sakazuki spoke up. Naruto analyzed Sakazuki as he slowly approached. He was a rather tall and muscular man, with a square-shaped face. He was garbed in an all-dark red suit, which at the NEC.K had a light-colored flower-patterned shirt unbuttoned, showing of his tattoo. Finally he wore a standard marine hat over his short black hair. Yes, I'm sure, my son is an arrogant fool. Though if you feel the boy must be punished, have his mother pay the price for him. Kaden proposed, giving off a vile grin, pointing to the downed and bleeding Kushina. Naruto jumped in front of Kushina, taking a defensive stance against the two men. He'd be damned if he would let either of the two hurt her. Damn it, if only Tu-san was here. This issue would have already been resolved. Naruto thought to himself, looking over his shoulder to his bleeding mother. Sakazuki started to chuckle as he walked forward. Alright, I'll capture the boy and kill the woman then. The marine revealed casually. Naruto switched all his focus towards the man. Then by letting loose a growl he charged forward. You're not doing shit, the blonde yelled, coating his fists with haki. I'll just defeat you and escape, no problem. Sakazuki watched Naruto dash forward with a small amount of interest. I'm a young child with a Logia devil fruit and training in haki. The marine analyzed, lazily catching Naruto's fist with his hand. You're no ordinary brat. I can tell you've received training from somewhere. Though I'm curious as to where. Go to hell. Naruto screamed, thrusting his haki-coated leg forward, intending to strike that man in his side. Sakazuki merely tossed the blonde over his shoulder by his arm. Then using all his power, he slammed Naruto onto the ground. You got spunk, brat, but you're 1,000 years too young to fight a vice admiral. Sakazuki spoke in a condescending voice, while slamming his foot into Naruto's stomach, knocking the breath out of the small child. Now Sakazuki-kun tried to keep that boy in one piece. His value would go down if you were to rough him up too badly. Kaden called out from the side. Don't worry, I won't cripple the boy. Sakazuki replied, stomping a second time onto Naruto's chest, causing Naruto to shriek in pain, from the superior weight crashing down onto him. Kushina slowly rose to her knees and looked to her son. She saw the pain covering his face, and the vile smirk the vice admiral bore. However, her eyes drifted to the gun, which Kozen had dropped when Naruto attacked him. Reaching out with a shaking hand, Kushina grabbed the gun and held it up. Get the hell away from my son. The enraged mother yelled, finally knowing nothing could be fixed now. So she did the only thing she could think of, she pulled the trigger. Doing so with enough accuracy to hit where the man's heart was located. Then she fired again and again, never stopping until the gun clicked empty. Sakazuki remained still, his hat overshadowing his eyes. A red liquid visibly leaking out of multiple bullet holes. However, this liquid wasn't blood. Wah! What are you? Kushina gasped, looking at the marine with fear. I'm a devil fruit user, just like this brat right here. Though I ate the Magu Magu no Mi, which made me a magma man. Sakazuki revealed, bending down to grasp down onto Naruto's neck. Let go of me. Naruto wheezed out, unable to turn his body into wind. Thanks to the magma man's haki-coated grip, Sakazuki ignored Naruto's request and began moving towards Kushina, his free hand already beginning to drip magma. I wasn't going to get involved with any of this. Headquarters did say I only had to assist Kaden if he called for my help. Sakazuki admitted truthfully, stopping at Kushina's feet. But unfortunately for you, your son broke the law. And you assisted by attacking an officer of the world government. So for your crime I sentence you to death. Kushina's eyes grew wide, as she watched Sakazuki raise his molten fist into the air. Naruto, look away. The desperate mother ordered, but it was too late. Naruto watched helplessly, as Sakazuki buried his fist into Kushina's chest, causing her eyes to roll over and her body to slump forward. Ka-chan! Naruto screamed out with all his might, trying to break the marine's iron grip. Sakazuki ripped his fist out of Kushina's chest and let the woman fall over. She's left his world and soon you'll be wishing you could join her. Sakazuki mumbled in a low voice, bringing a haki-coated fist into the air. Welcome to the life of a slave brat. The man chuckled, striking Naruto over his head, knocking the blonde-haired child completely unconscious. XXXXXXXXX. Few days later, the Holy Land Mariajoy. Naruto slowly began to open his eyes, while doing so an intense pain swept through his body. Aw shit, my head. The blonde cried, clamping down on the side of his head. You're awake. A young and unfamiliar voice chirped happily. Naruto groaned as he tried to adjust his eyes to the light. Where am I? And why do I feel so weak? Naruto asked the unfamiliar person, his eyes finally adjusting, allowing Naruto to see a small brown-haired child, dressed in tattered clothing. Said boy was giving Naruto a forced wide smile, while standing over top of him. Hi, I'm Konohamaru and you're in Mariajoy. As to why you feel weak I don't know, maybe you're hungry or sick. The now named Konohamaru explained, hopping onto his backside and sitting cross-legged, all the while continuing to give Naruto a smile. Mariajoy, huh? Naruto mumbled, knowing very well what the city was. It was the capital of the world government. And the last place on the world he would like to be right now. So I really am a slave, then that means. Naruto balled his fist as it hit him. Kushina, his mother, was dead. She was murdered by that bastard of a marine, right before his eyes. Of course you're a slave. Why else would you be here? Konohamaru asked, chuckling to himself. Though I never got your name. Kaden-sama's guards just chained you up here and left you. Naruto looked down to his wrists and sure enough he found himself chained to a wall. However, Naruto also had chain-less cuffs around each wrist. These are probably made from kairoseki, that would explain why I feel so weak. Naruto spoke to himself, before turning his focus to a confused Konohamaru. Don't worry about that, but my name is Silver's Naruto. It's nice to meet you, Naruto. How is your collar treating you? I hope it isn't too tight. Konohamaru spoke up, pointing to the odd piece of metal around his neck. I'd suggest to not complain about it being too tight. Kaden-sama will normally have it tightened even further. Naruto felt his neck and without a doubt, he found a metal ring around his throat. Though this wasn't just any collar. It was a mechanism rigged with a bomb. Something Naruto had seen on slaves around the Sabayati archipelago. Whenever a slave was taken in public, their owner would hold onto a small chain, which was attached to the collar like a leash. So if the slave would try to run, the chain would be pulled out and the bomb would explode. It's fine, thanks for asking, Kono. Naruto replied casually, trying to make the best of his current situation. Kono. The small child mumbled the shortened version of his name, confused by what the blonde meant, but never breaking his smile. Yeah, Kono, it's my nickname for you. Geez, have you never had anyone give you one? Naruto asked, trying to ignore the child's smile, which was growing more odd and disturbing as the conversion continued. Konohamaru shook his head. Nope, I've never had one before. Well, Kaden-sama calls me bastard and little shit. Does that count as one? Konohamaru asked, causing Naruto to frown. Thinking to himself, who would treat a small child like that? No, Konohamaru, it doesn't, the blonde replied, slightly enraged by what the boy told him. But tell me something. How old are you and how long have you been a slave? Oh, that's easy, I'm 7 years old and I've been a slave since the day I was born. Konohamaru explained, causing Naruto to tighten his fists. My mom was sold as a slave to Kaden-sama, when she was pregnant. Though she died shortly after giving birth to me. Kaden-sama said that she passed a few hours after I was born. He said she died while polishing his parlor room. Naruto snarled in anger, but his features quickly softened as he noticed Konohamaru's expression. The boy's smile had dropped and for a moment, Naruto could see the pain and hurt he held within. However, Konohamaru quickly brought his smile back up and scanned the small room. Hoping no one had walked in and seen his frown, Naruto picked up on the child's odd behavior and crossed his arms, causing his chains to rattle. Why do you always smile? I can tell you are miserable here. Naruto analyzed, slightly surprising the younger child. Don't be afraid to tell me, there isn't anyone nearby. And besides, I wouldn't let anyone harm you. Konohamaru looked down as he fiddled nervously with his fingers. Well, sometimes if a slave will cry or stop working, Kaden-sama will have them killed. So it's best to always smile and work hard. You'll live longer that way. The small child explained quietly. Naruto's anger had well passed over its peak, due to the information that Konohamaru had shared with him. Though he brushed his feelings aside and placed his hand on the child's spiky hair. Listen up, Kono, it's okay to cry. I won't let these bastards hurt you. Do you understand what I'm saying? Naruto spoke softly, causing a teary-eyed Konohamaru to look up. But nothing, Kono, just listen to me. We aren't going to be slaves for long. If I don't find a way to escape within the next few months, Maitu-san will come, and when he does, hell will be raised. The blonde-haired child assured, ruffling the boy's hair. So for now, just stick close to me and be strong. We will escape this hellhole together. Konohamaru wiped his eyes and gave a smile, but this wasn't a false smile. This was a wide grin that showed true happiness. All right, Ni-san, I'll be strong and stay by your side. The younger slave replied, causing Naruto to smile back. Hee, what's all this Ni-san about? Naruto asked, slowly growing attached to the younger child. Konohamaru chuckled to himself. It's my nickname for you, why do you not like it? Konohamaru asked, his smile dropping. Nah, it's not a very good nickname, Naruto replied, causing the boy to deflate. But I'd be more than happy to be your Ni-san. I always wanted a little brother. Konohamaru's eye lit up with joy, something Naruto hadn't seen the boy do since they began to talk. Really, you mean it? The small slave nearly shouted in excitement. Naruto looked around the small dreary room he was in. There was 2 torn mattresses and a bucket. The only form of an exit was a large rusty metal door. Most people would be miserable and an emotional wreck in this situation. But from just showing a small sliver of kindness to Konohamaru, Naruto was able to lift the boy's spirits up, while also cheering himself up and keeping his focus off his mother. "Yeah, Kono, from this day on just call me Naruto ni." Naruto replied happily, his eyes finally stopping and focusing on the small child. They had both lost their mothers, but now they both have gained a brother. However, Naruto had also gained something else. A hatred for a certain marine. "Hold on to your pathetic life, I'm coming for you, Sakazuki," Naruto thought to himself, never showing his true emotions to Konohamaru. XXXXXXXXX few hours later. Over the last few hours, Naruto had spent his time talking with Konohamaru. He had told the boy all about his life back home, including the members of his family. This of course urged the small slave boy to ask hundreds of questions, all of which involved either Naruto's father or uncle. But it wasn't every day you met a relative of two famous pirates, both of whom were on the same ship as the Pirate King. Naruto had also shared how he consumed the K's no Mi, causing the child to ask even more questions, about what kind of kick-ass things the blonde could do. Naruto enjoyed answering the child's questions and talking with him. In fact, the more Konohamaru opened up, the more Naruto could see himself in the boy. "So Naruto ni, I have a question." Konohamaru spoke up, smiling happily. Naruto cocked a smirk and leaned against the wall behind him. "Another question, Kono. Man, you're full of them." The blonde joked to himself. Ut motioned for Konohamaru to speak with his hand. "But I'm happy to answer any question you may have." Konohamaru looked down, slowly drawing lines in the dirt-covered floor. Do you really think we can escape?" the slave asked, his voice low and weak. Naruto closed his eyes. Konohamaru had been born a slave. He had never known any other form of life besides servitude. A lifestyle which heavily conflicted with Naruto's dream to live free on the sea. "Listen, Kono, I sure as hell don't plan to stay here long. In a few years I'll be sailing off to become a great pirate," Naruto explained, opening his eyes and studying the boy's facial features. "And I'd love to have my little brother travel with me, but first we'd have to escape here." Konohamaru looked up with excitement. "Really, Ni-san? You'd let me be on your crew?" the small child shouted loudly, jumping to his feet almost hitting the short ceiling. "Of course, Kono, but first we gotta get out of here," Naruto replied with a wide grin. However, he stopped and seemed to blank out, like the blonde was focusing on something. "Well, Naruto ni, how can we escape?" Naruto stopped the boy's speech by placing a hand over his mouth. "Listen closely, Kono. I sense a few people approaching. Act natural and don't give anything away. It wouldn't be good if they found out about my family or our plans to escape," the blonde-haired slave whispered, thinking for a moment if he should have actually trusted Konohamaru with his family heritage. "Don't worry, Ni-san, I'd never give anything away," the smaller slave replied. "We are brothers, we gotta stick together." Naruto smiled. He knew his trust was well placed, though his attention was brought to the door, as he heard a lock click open. "How is my new servant faring?" the voice of Kaden asked, before Naruto watched him walk into the small room, flanked by two guards on each of his side. The blonde didn't utter a single word. However, he did take notice of the small pot a guard was holding. Just from using his eyes, Naruto could tell the contents were incredibly hot, due to the steam rolling off the top of the pot. "Is that little shit awake?" the voice of Kaden's son, Kozen, yelled from outside. "I'm going to strangle him to death." Naruto watched emotionlessly as Kozen entered the room. However, the blonde had to quickly bite his tongue when he noticed the noble, trying his absolute hardest to refrain himself from laughing at Kozen. His nose had been broken and twisted from the blow to the face that Naruto had gave him, while his left eye now sported a black eye patch to cover his lost eye. Now Kozen, what did I tell you about this child? He's special and cannot be simply put down like any other slave," the older noble scolded, bending down to Naruto's level. "We are above everyone else in this world, but what of our fellow celestial dragons? What sets us apart from them?" Kozen crossed his arms and looked off to the side of the room. "The things we own," the son answered with a growl. Already knowing the answer, Kaden let out a smirk and nodded. "You are right, so having a slave as rare as a devil fruit eater helps establish our wealth to everyone in Mariajoy," the celestial dragon explained, clicking his fingers quickly. "Bring me the branding iron." Yes, Kaden-sama. A guard spoke quickly, rushing over to his master's side. Naruto watched the man hand over a long slim iron pole, with some weird design on the tip. He then looked over to Kozen, who was grinning like a madman. Naruto didn't have to be a genius to know what was going on. Tell me, boy, what is your name? Kaden asked, lifting up the blonde's shirt with the piece of cold metal. Naruto thought for a moment. He could use a snappy retort or tell the man to piss off. Though for Konohamaru and his own sake, Naruto decided that playing along and being a good sav would be his best course of action. Naruto. The blonde spoke emotionlessly, while intentionally leaving out his last name. Kaden motioned for the other guard to approach. Well, Naruto, I'm happy to welcome you into a life of servitude. The celestial dragon spoke sinisterly, dipping the rod into the steaming pot of red-hot coals. Hold the boy down. The second guard walked over to Naruto and ripped his shirt off. Then by climbing down onto his arms, he held the boy still. Though it wasn't like Naruto attempted to struggle. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing him in distress. Konohamaru watched his new surrogate brother with worry in his eye, remembering how painful his own branding was. Though the small slave was shocked, he watched Kaden press the hot iron against the blonde's chest. But Naruto didn't scream or cry out in pain. No, instead he looked over to Konohamaru and gave a small, almost unseen smile. Naruto was going to be strong for his new brother Sake. Kozen caught the glimpse of this smile and frowned as he looked over to Konohamaru. He wanted Naruto to be suffering and broken, not smiling and happy. Most slaves cry out in pain or beg for mercy. Kaden spoke up, removing the iron rod from the blonde's skin, revealing a large burn mark, which left the symbol that all slaves bore. I can tell you shall be a very strong and dependable servant. Naruto didn't reply, but Kaden didn't seem to mind. He turned to Konohamaru and gave the child a stern look. Patch young Naruto up, then show him where the cleaning supplies are. Kaden spoke up, taking a small roll of bandages out of his pocket. Before he tossed them at Konohamaru's feet. He shall be taking the same cleaning shifts you do, but since you'll be working faster with 2 people, you can also do some landscaping around the estate. Konohamaru snatched the bandages up and moved over to Naruto. I understand, Kaden-sama. The brown-haired slave replied, giving his wide and fake smile. Good, and you? Kaden spoke, while pointing to one of his guards. Unchain young Naruto off the wall. Then you are to observe him and Konohamaru as they work. Also don't forget to punish them if they decide to slack off. The guard brought a hand to his head and saluted. Understood, Kaden-sama. The man replied quickly, causing the celestial dragon to smirk. All right, everything seems to be under control then. Kaden spoke happily, moving towards the door. Come, Kozen, our morning feast is probably finished. Let's leave the peasants be so we can dine. Kozen moved towards the door, where his father had already exited out of. Then he gave Naruto one final death glare, which the blonde returned with an emotionless gaze. Before the noble huffed in annoyance and stomped off. You know, it would be best to be on Kozen-sama's good side. Though considering you are the one who defaced him and blinded him in one eye, I believe you're permanently on his shit list. The guard spoke up, unchaining Naruto from the wall. Thanks for the advice, but I really don't care what list I'm on. Naruto replied casually, slowly rising to his feet. Damn, it's even harder to stand with these kairoseki cuffs. Konohamaru quickly placed his hands onto Naruto and tried to push him back down. Naruto, wait, I haven't bandaged you up yet. Don't be reckless and risk your health. The small child attempted to reason, but had no success. I'm fine, Konohamaru, a roll of bandages won't help me anyhow. Naruto replied, snatching the bandages from Konohamaru and placing them in his pocket. It would be better to save these for a rainy day, if you know what I mean. But Naruto, you should. Naruto placed a hand on Konohamaru's head and ruffled his hair, halting the young child's speech. Don't worry about me, Kono, it's my job as the older brother to watch out for you. Naruto replied with a small smile, suddenly feeling the guard push him forward. Save the talk for later. If you're not going to patch yourself up, might as well begin your work for the day. The guard spoke sternly, leading Naruto and Konohamaru out of the small room, leading him towards the start of his life in absolute hell. XXXXXXXXX 1 month later. It's been 1 whole month since Naruto started his life as a slave. NCE then it's been a constant schedule of working, fighting starvation and being abused. Being too proud to admit it, Naruto was near his breaking point. He had seen terrible horrors throughout his small time in enslavement, such as small children being starved to death or slaves being brutally beaten till they died. It pained Naruto to watch all the horrible things Kaden, his son and their guards did. Though thanks to the Kairoseki cuffs, Naruto was so weak he could hardly summon enough strength to walk, let alone fight a large number of trained guards in order to protect some slaves he didn't even know. However, it wasn't like Naruto was exempt from these beatings either. In fact, Kozen took a great deal of pleasure in beating Naruto on a daily basis. The noble wanted to get his revenge on the young slave by making his life hell, but Naruto didn't care. The beatings hardly affected him, since his father would hit much harder during their training. Though when Kozen started to threaten Konohamaru, Naruto could nearly hold his anger at bay. Only once had Kozen made good on his treats. Naruto almost snapped when he watched his surrogate brother take a whip several times to the back. It wasn't a pleasant moment in Naruto's life, but Konohamaru did something that held the blonde from losing his temper. He gave Naruto the same smile of courage and perseverance that the blonde had showed him while he was being branded. Unfortunate, right after his beating, Naruto and Konohamaru had to continue working. This took a heavy toll on Konohamaru's small body, as intense working while bleeding out of an open wound wasn't healthy for a 7-year-old. But Konohamaru managed to push through his pain and survive, showing Naruto his large amount of willpower, making the blonde proud of how strong his little brother could be. For now, however, it has been a full week since the incident involving Konohamaru's beating. Currently the two brothers are resting in their small room, which Naruto had found out was located in the lowest floor of Kaiden's massive home. It was their own little slice of hell, or that's what Naruto referred their living space to. Naruto found it rather difficult to relax on the old worn-out mattress. Not only did it reek of some foul odor, but it hardly provided any cushion between the blonde's body and hard stone floor. Rolling onto his side, Naruto noticed his little brother figure. He was curled into a ball across from Naruto. His back was turned towards the blonde slave, allowing him to see all the marks Kozen had left on him. Just like Naruto, he refused treatment, saying he was alright. Though Naruto knew this was a lie, but he didn't want to give the boy pity. He knew that was something Konohamaru didn't need. Pitying him would only make the child feel worse and weak. "Hey Kono, how you feeling?" Naruto spoke up, his voice laced with concern. "You've been pretty quiet lately." Konohamaru curled up tighter, causing Naruto to frown. So the blonde slave rose weakly to his feet. Then he slowly moved over to Konohamaru. "Kono, what's the matter? You know that you can talk to me." Naruto spoke softly, taking a seat by the child's side. "It's nothing," the small child mumbled out, his voice sounding on the verge of tears. Naruto sighed and brushed a hand through his messy blonde hair. "Look Kono, you're a pretty shit liar. So why don't you open up to me? I'm your big brother after all." Naruto spoke with a small smile at the end. "It's just I've been thinking a lot lately. You know about escaping from this place." Konohamaru took a pause and took a deep breath. "It's been over a month since you arrived here. And we've made no progress in escaping." Konohamaru moved his body up and looked into Naruto's blue eyes, letting the older boy see the tears running down his cheeks. "I don't want to die a slave, Ni-san. I want to be happy. I want to see the world. I want to know what freedom is like." Konohamaru cried out, as he balled his hands into fists. "I want to be free from this place, I want." Naruto stopped the child by placing a hand on his head. "Kono, it's fine, believe me when I say we will escape. I promised you that I'd get you out of here. So have some faith in your older brother." Konohamaru took a deep breath and attempted steady his rapid breathing, in order to calm himself down. "All right Naruto ni, I'll keep believing in you. It's just I've been a slave for so long, I don't want to build my hopes up only to fail." Konohamaru admitted, slowly wiping his tears. "I know Kono, but like I said, no matter what happens, we will escape soon. My 2-san shouldn't be another month or two. Then he will find us and I bet even my Uncle Shanks would also come to our aid." Naruto explained, trying to refill the boy with confidence. Quote, Konohamaru chuckled a little bit, just using the notion of famous pirates storming the city to save him. Brought a great deal of happiness into his small heart. Though just as Konohamaru opened his mouth to speak, the door to their room clicked open. Then without warning swung completely open. "Get your sorry asses outside," a gruff voice demanded. Before the voice entered he room to reveal one of Kaiden's guards. Naruto cocked an eyebrow. He wasn't intimidated by the guard like most of the slaves were. "Why should we? Our work shift is finished for the day," the blonde-haired slave replied casually, not affected by the cold stare he received. "Because you little shit, Kaiden-sama demands that all slaves report to the main foyer," the guard replied, with a small amount of rage behind his voice. "Apparently he has a very important announcement, so get off your lazy ass." Naruto snorted as he watched the guard walk off, silently thinking of the fate that will befall the man and his fellow captors. "Whatever, either way you're going to die, bastard. It may be done by my hand or another, but you all die. Just like those three bastards. Kozen, Kaiden, and worst of all Sakazuki," Naruto thought to himself, darkly rising to his feet. "I'll make them pay for what they did. They will die by my hands and my hands alone." Naruto let a small smile grace his lips, then looking down to Konohamaru, he held out a helping hand for the child. "Come on Kono, looks like we have somewhere to be." Naruto spoke up, using his normally happy and carefree voice. "Don't want to keep everyone waiting on us." Konohamaru took his older brother's hand and rose weakly to his feet, never knowing what the older slave was truly thinking. "Yenny-chan, let's go," the boy replied calmly, before they began their way towards the foyer, where Kaiden and his big news awaited them. Naruto was making his way up a tight spiraling staircase and Konohamaru was following close behind, like he always would. Eventually Naruto reached the top of the stairs and walked through an open door. Coming out on the other side, he found his fellow slaves filed together, all of them standing in front of a large elegant staircase, which lead to the upper floors of the mansion. At the very peak of the stairs, at the point where it forked to the left and to the right, Kaiden was standing over his servants, looking down at them with a look of superiority. A few feet over to his left, his son Kozen watched the slaves gather, while giving the same look as his father. Naruto took quick notice of the two men, before he followed into the line of slaves, who were all waiting for the announcement that their master had for them. After a few moments of silence and all the slaves had gathered into the room, Kaiden stepped forward and cleared his throat. "As you all might be aware of, my ancestors along with 19 other kings formed what we know today as the world government. Altogether that makes up 20 royal families. For you slower individuals." Kaiden took a pause to gather his thoughts, while letting the information he was giving sink in. "However, only 19 of these royal families actually live in Mariajoy. Like you all know, me and my son are a part of one of these families. We are celestial dragons." Kaiden took another pause and began to pace back and forth. "The last family chose to return to their people and kingdom. They are known as the Nefertari family and they rule over the kingdom of Alabasta. Unlike us, they are not world nobles, but that isn't important," Kaiden explained to the slaves, stopping for a moment to search the crowd of servants. "What is important is what is currently drawing near. Can anyone tell me what special event will happen within the next 2 weeks?" The room remained silent. Not a single soul knew anything of any special event. It wasn't like they were allowed to read the news or know the happenings of Mariajoy. Kaiden sighed and rubbed his forehead. "Kozen, tell these fools what I'm talking about," the father ordered, pointing to the ground before walking a few steps back. Kozen walked to the spot his father pointed, then took a moment to collect his thoughts. "What my father is referring to, you miserable shits, is the reverie, or in more lame terms, a meeting between all the kings and queens affiliated with the world government," Kozen explained, speaking with a cocky and superior tone. "Very well explained, son," Kaiden praised, patting his son on the back and stepping forward. "But I'll finish things off from here." Kozen gave a bow and walked behind his father. "Now every year this event is held. One of my fellow celestial dragons will open their home up to the current leader of the Nefertari family. This is a sign of friendship and an honor for the family who gets to house the king," Kaiden explained. At this point Naruto rolled his eyes. The blonde figured out what this big announcement was. Kaiden had been chosen to house the Nefertari family. So now he was making this little spectacle to stroke his ego. This year we shall be hosting the Nefertari family. Kaden shouted happily, throwing his hands into the air, waiting for his praise or any form of recognition. I figured as much. Naruto mumbled under his breath, not impressed in the slightest. Konohamaru looked over to his brother, impressed by Naruto's ability to figure things out so quickly. Though his focus was turned to Kozen, who started to clap slowly for his father. Soon all the slaves, save Naruto and Konohamaru, joined in. Kaden basked in his moment of arrogance. Before holding a hand high into the air, signaling all the slaves to hold their praise. You are all too kind, that is why I've decided to shift your schedules around. When King Cobra arrives, he will be escorted by 2 guards and 1 assistant. I want everyone who normally tends to my garden, to assist the king and his men while they are here. Kaden explained. RNING a few nods and bows from certain slaves. Also whereas young Naruto and Konohamaru. The sea of servants parted down the middle, to reveal the only 2 children within the crowd. Kaden smiled and began walking down the stairs. Ah, there you 2 are. I have a very special job for both of you. Kaden spoke happily, making his way ever so slowly towards the children. You see, the king will also be bringing his daughter with him. Her name is Princess Vivi and is around the same age as you 2. So you want us to watch after some spoiled brat? Naruto interjected emotionlessly, causing Kaden to smirk. And cater to her every whim, of course. The world noble added in. Can you 2 handle this task, because if not I could always purchase a few more children slaves for the job. Konohamaru gave a bow of respect. We can, Kaden-sama, we will take excellent care of young Vivi-sama when she arrives. The brown-haired slave spoke up, speaking up for himself and Naruto. The latter of whom would refuse to bow to any man, let alone show his captors any form of respect. What about you, Naruto? I didn't hear you speak up. Kaden asked, ignoring Konohamaru completely. Naruto eyed the man, or more importantly the keyring around his hip, where Naruto spotted the key to unlock his kairoseki cuffs. Maybe if I'm quick enough I could snatch the key. Then there wouldn't be a way to stop me once these cuffs are off. Naruto reasoned to himself in thought, but stopped as he looked down to Konohamaru. No Kono could get hurt during the scuffle for the key. Kaden's lip twitched in annoyance, his patience growing thin. Boy, answer me when I address you. The noble shouted loudly, gripping his fist tightly, preparing himself to strike Naruto. Naruto watched the man and for a moment, prayed that the man would strike him. Because if he did, then Naruto would snap regardless of anything else. He would kill Kaden the next time he touched either him or Konohamaru. I said speak. Kaden shouted again in anger. Yes, I will take care of the princess. Naruto replied in a dead voice, thinking to himself how much he'd love to end Kaden's life here and now. But ultimately now wasn't the right time. Kaden nodded and then clapped his hands together, satisfied that he had finished his announcement. Very well, you all may return to as you were. The celestial dragon spoke up, walking up the stairs and away from the slaves. Naruto watched the man continue up the stairs with his son, quickly disappearing into the upper floors of the mansion. I'm growing sick of this place, Naruto admitted, turning towards the stairs which lead to the slave quarters. And I really don't feel like watching over some spoiled brat. Konohamaru ran up to Naruto's side and chuckled. Ni-san, how see? And you grow sick of a place that you hated from the start? The small slave asked with a laugh, trying to lift his older brother figure's spirit. Naruto smiled and ruffled Konohamaru's hair. He always knew how to cheer the blonde up. You got a point, Kono, but let's go get some rest. We have a big workload tomorrow. Naruto replied with a smile, walking down the stairs with his brother in tow. XXXXXXXXX 2 weeks later. Naruto stood amongst the crowd of slaves, who would all be serving the Nefertari family and all their men. Every single slave was gathered outside of Kaden's large estate. Ed together to make a path which led from the front gate to the door to the mansion. Naruto was next to Konohamaru and the duo waited patiently for Kaden to return. Well, not really patiently, since Naruto didn't want to be there in the first place. Plus he had been waiting in the same spot for over an hour. So the blonde-haired slave was ready to snap someone's neck. When is that stupid bastard going to be here? Naruto growled under his breath. Konohamaru sighed and slumped over. I don't know Ni-san, but I'm getting tired of waiting. The small boy whined. My legs are starting to go numb. Yeah, I'm starting to grow sick of all this waiting around as well. Though I don't just mean waiting for that bastard Kaden. Naruto admitted before taking a pause, so he could scan the area. Makin. Sure no one was listening to their conversation. What do you mean Naruto ni? Konohamaru asked in a hushed voice. Already knowing his brother was going to talk about something important. Since Ohamaru knew that Naruto would always check his surroundings before he would start speaking about something he felt others shouldn't know about. I'm sick and tired of this place, I want to escape soon. So I've devised a plan to do so. Naruto whispered in a low voice, leaning into Konohamaru and cupping a hand around his ear. I want you to listen carefully, Kono. Alright Ni-chan, I'm listening. Konohamaru replied, starting to grow a little excited. He and Naruto always spoke of escape, but neither of the two have actually spoke of a plan before. It filled the boy with a small amount of hope. Okay Kono, this plan calls for a lot of work from you. So listen good and pay attention to detail. Naruto began, taking a slight moment to think of a proper way to explain his plan. We need one thing if we want to escape. And that is to remove the K. Attention everyone. A loud and familiar voice boomed, causing Naruto to stop speaking and jerk up straight. Allow me to introduce you to the Nefertari family. Naruto cocked his head to the side and looked over to Kaden, who had his son and several unfamiliar faces standing behind him. Suddenly Kaden walked forward and held his hands out wide. Please make them feel welcome and show them to their quarters. Not a second less after the celestial dragon finished speaking. The slaves scattered about and headed to the men they were assigned to serve. Naruto began to move towards the crowd and motioned for Konohamaru to follow him. As the duo walked, several slaves escorting some of the king's guards passed by. The blonde noticed two men with swords and a strange individual with an odd haircut. Freak. The blonde mumbled under his breath, showing his distaste for Kaden's new guests. Konohamaru snickered at the blonde's comment and looked over his shoulders. However, he quickly turned his head when he saw one of the guards look back and stare directly at him, wondering to himself if they may have heard Naruto's comment. Thinking that wasn't possible unless the man had some kind of canine hearing. The small 7-year-old continued to follow his older brother figure. Where is Naruto and Konohamaru at? An unhappy Kaden roared loudly, his voice breaking through the crowd of slaves. The two boys made their way into the crowd of slaves and reached the center of the group, to find Kaden and his son standing next to an unfamiliar man. He was around average height with a tied-off beard, and long, curly, black hair. He was dressed in long green robe with yellow edging, with an orange and beige sash around his waist, and a purple coat to finish his attire off. Though the most odd thing was the small mess of blue hair, which was hiding behind the man's back. Must be the king and his daughter. Naruto mused in thought, looking up to Kaden, waiting for the man to speak. Ah, here they are, your majesty. Allow me to introduce the two boys, who will be assisting your daughter during her stay here. Kaden spoke up quickly, walking behind Naruto and Konohamaru and pushing them forward. Bow and introduce yourself, boys. Naruto and Konohamaru stumbled forward, causing Cobra to frown. However, Naruto was the only one to catch this frown. Greetings King Cobra-sama, my name is Konohamaru. I shall be serving your daughter while she stays here. Konohamaru spoke up, as he was the first of the two to bow to the king. Naruto grabbed Konohamaru by his shirt and jerked him into the air. And I am Naruto, the blonde said, refusing to bow to the man or let his brother do so. Come Kaden, yell at me or hit me, please Ake a complete ass of yourself in front of your guest. Naruto added to himself in thought, still remembering how he planned to kill Kaden, the next time he struck the blonde. Kaden silently began to shake in rage. Just like Naruto thought he wanted to beat the blonde. However, he didn't want to make a bad impression in front of the king. You'll learn some respect, brat, just you wait. Kaden thought to himself, already planning on punishing Naruto when the king wasn't around. Naruto and Konohamaru, I'm pleased to make your acquaintance. Cobra spoke sincerely, while surprising everyone by bowing to the two slaves. Please would you both watch over my precious Vivi. Kaden and Kozen both sneered and were appalled by the king's behavior. Thinking to themselves what kind of king would bow to children and slaves at that. Naruto on the other hand was a little surprised. He was not expecting the king to greet him in such a manner. Maybe the blonde had judged the man too soon. Yeah, we shall take care of the princess during her stay, Naruto replied, speaking slowly as he watched the king rise back to a straight standing position. Thank you. Cobra spoke sincerely, turning around and pushing his daughter out from behind him. Please introduce yourself to young Naruto-kun and Konohamaru-kun. Naruto observed the young princess with a critical eye. She wasn't very tall at all, in fact she was around the same height as Konohamaru. Though from looking at her, Naruto gauged she was more around his age. He also noticed her beautiful light blue hair, which was a hair color that Naruto had never seen before. Admitting to himself that her hair went perfectly with her light-colored skin. Before he knew it, Naruto found himself completely absorbed in staring into the princess's dark-colored eyes. Only stopping for a moment to look at her attire, which consisted of a simple, but beautiful light pink sundress. Suddenly Naruto felt a sense of inferiority sweep over him. The girl standing before him was an elegant and gorgeous princess, while he was just a simple slave, dressed in old ragged clothes. What the hell are you doing, Naruto? The blonde asked himself in thought, shaking his thoughts off the princess. You need to worry about escaping with Kono, not googling over some little brat. Besides, she's a noble princess, don't forget you are a pirate prince. We live in completely different worlds. Naruto was brought from his thoughts, as he noticed the princess nervously step forward. Hello, it's nice to meet you, my name is Vivi. The bashful princess spoke up in a low voice, looking towards the ground for some reason. I'm looking forward to getting to know both of you. Konohamaru cocked a happy smile. To him the princess seemed pretty alright. She wasn't a demanding brat like he and Naruto pictured her as. Naruto looked down to his smiling brother, then the princess, his eyes lingering off to the king and his captor Kaden. Let's go. Naruto spoke in a bored tone, growing tired of standing around and giving out useless introductions. So he turned around and walked towards the house. Follow me, princess, I'll show you to where your room will be. Vivi looked up and looked back to her father, who made a motion for her to follow Naruto. Go on, Vivi-chan, I'll stop by in a little bit to check on you. Also don't forget Pell, Chaka and Agaram are here. So if you need anything don't hesitate to ask them, said Cobra as he bent down and ruffled his daughter's hair. Also remember everything I said before we came here. Vivi nodded her head and smiled at her father. Alright 2-chan, and don't worry, I remember. The princess replied before turning towards Naruto and Konohamaru. Don't leave yet, I need to grab my things. Konohamaru froze in place, as he watched Vivi make her way towards the carriage behind her, where the luggage carrying her belongings was. Naruto looked over his shoulder and sighed. Kaden was fuming as he watched Vivi dig through the carriage for her possessions, though the king didn't seem to mind at all. In fact, he didn't even look towards his daughter. I better go grab her shit before Kaden loses his. Naruto mumbled to himself, quickly making his way over to Vivi. Konohamaru saw Naruto take off after Vivi and he followed the blonde's lead, both reaching the carriage at the same time. Reaching the area right as Vivi hopped off the carriage, with her bag wrapped in her arms. Here, princess, allow me to take your things. Naruto spoke up, while reaching out for the bag in Vivi's arms. Vivi gave a small smile and shook her head. No, it's very alright, I'm capable of carrying my own things. The blue-haired princess replied, walking past Naruto. Thanks for the offer anyhow. Konohamaru stepped in front of Vivi, blocking the young noble's path. Please, Vivi-sama, just let us take your bag. The small sav begged, knowing Kaden was glaring a hole into the back of his head. Cobra noticed Kaden's angered expression. Following the man's gaze, he quickly figured out what enraged the man. Those poor children are just like Vivi, but look what this man has done to them. The king thought sadly, knowing very well what was happening. Naruto reached out for Vivi's bag and gave a hard expression. Listen, princess, see the fat bastard with steam rolling out of his ears? Naruto asked in a hushed tone, speaking about Kaden. If you don't let us take your bag, he will punish us for failing to take care of you. Honestly, I couldn't care less what he does to me, but I won't let him hurt my brother. Just because you want to act independent. Vivi looked down, her hair overshadowing her eyes. I'm sorry, here, take my bag. Vivi replied, handing over the small suitcase. Naruto accepted the bag and turned his back to the girl. Now you can follow me to your room. The blonde slave explained, already starting to walk away. You know I wasn't trying to be independent. Vivi spoke in a low voice, causing Naruto to stand still for a moment. I was just trying to treat you two like people, not slaves. Naruto gripped tightly onto Vivi's bag, before he continued to walk towards the mansion. Vivi watched the blonde walk away. A lone tear traveling down her cheek. Her father had told her about the slaves she would see during her stay. However, she would never imagine a child around her age suffering through such hardships. Not even truly knowing the full extent of his heartache and struggles. Don't cry, Vivi-sama. Konohamaru spoke up with a smile, standing in front of the girl and earning her attention. Ni-san might not show it. But he's really happy by what you said. So since you make him happy, I like you. Vivi brushed the side of her face, removing the tear from her cheek. All right, Konohamaru-san, but why don't we follow your brother? The princess proposed, looking at the blonde who was nearing the mansion's door. Konohamaru grinned before he gestured her to walk. Please, after you, Vivi-sama. The small child spoke happily, causing Vivi to nod and start walking. As the two children walked, they passed the king and Kaden. Cobra smiled at his daughter, while Kaden continued to scowl. He was going to have Naruto learn his lesson very soon. XXXXXXXXX Marine HQ. Walking passively through the open corridors of the Marine HQ was a single man, who after over a month of duty, had finally returned back to report to his commanding officer. As the man walked, he was greeted by his fellow Marines. However, he ignored the men and women as he passed by. For he wasn't a man to greet others a smile or take interest in the lives of his fellow Marines. He was Vice Admiral Sakazuki, a cold and emotionally detached man, who believed in his philosophy of absolute justice. In fact, he had such a great deal of faith in his beliefs, that he would kill any man, woman or child to see his justice through. To say this man was a horrendous bastard was an understatement. However, there was one man even worse than him. A man who was not only Sakazuki's commanding officer, but his mentor as well. This man's name was Admiral Danzo Shimura, a horrible marine who became famous during the era of Galdi. Roger. Sakazuki had been called of his duty to report personally back to Danzo. Which is the reason behind the marine knocking on the door to Danzo's office. Entering only moments after striking the door. Not waiting for permission to enter. As he entered the room, Sakazuki nearly bumped into a pale slender man, dressed in a white lab coat. My apologies, Vice Admiral San. The man spoke with a smooth voice. Before walking past Sakazuki and leaving the office, the marine officer raised an eyebrow, before he looked to the powerful man behind the large oak desk. The desk covered most of Danzo's body, but it still allowed Sakazuki to see the bandages around the man's face. However, Sakazuki quickly gave Danzo a questioning look, as he was curious as to why he was meeting with a scientist. Think nothing of it, Sakazuki. That man doesn't concern you. Danzo spoke up, moving out from behind his desk, allowing Sakazuki to see the arm, which Danzo had placed into a sling. Due to an injury years ago, that rendered his limb practically useless. Sakazuki then watched as the bandaged man moved to the side of his office, where a small table with an assortment of alcohol stood by. Care for a drink? Danzo asked, using his only good arm to fetch 2 cups. Sakazuki walked over to a small chair and took a seat. Why did you call for my return to HQ? The magma man asked, wanting to get right to the point. Danzo chuckled to himself. So that's a no on drinks. The admiral replied, placing the cups back where they originally were. I'd say take a seat, but you've already found one, I see. For the second time, Danzo. What did you call me back for? Sakazuki asked rather impatiently, causing Danzo to snort. Before he made his way back to his desk. I can see you're still a man of patience, Sakazuki. Danzo chuckled to himself, before reaching for a folder on his desk. But in all seriousness, I've been skimming over your report from that escort mission you carried out. You remember the one, right? I ordered you to assist Kaden and his son with any request they asked of you. Sakazuki gave a small nod. He remembered the mission. Yes, you made me look after those celestial idiots. Danzo gave a small smile. Sakazuki hated the celestial dragons just as much as himself. Yes, that mission, but what I'm more interested in is the events that transpired during your mission. Danzo explained, tossing the folded onto his desk. It says here you executed a red-haired woman while capturing her son for Kaden to keep as a slave. What of it? Sakazuki asked, showing no remorse for his actions. Danzo's lips curled into a small smile. You also explained that this boy was a devil fruit user who also had some form of advanced hockey training. Sakazuki lowered his hat over his eyes and chuckled. So the boy intrigues you, I assume? The devil fruit user asked, thinking back to the blonde child. Danzo spun around on his chair, turning his back to the Marine. Maybe, but that boy does make me think back to a certain time in the past, where a certain man with an incredible amount of hockey fought through the seas. He was known for his blonde hair and his superior swordsmanship. Danzo then turned back around with a smirk. This man has been rumored to have been spotted in the Sabayati archipelago. Tell me, Sakazuki-kun, have you heard of Silver's Rayleigh? Sakazuki jerked his eyes up. Who hasn't heard of the first mate of the Pirate King? A man just as powerful as his captain, a man who, unlike his captain, is still walking the world free and alive. What are you getting at, old man? Sakazuki asked, with a mixture of interest and confusion. Danzo chuckled at the question. What I'm getting at is something you're probably already thinking. What if Rayleigh was in the Sabayati archipelago, and just by chance he met a red-haired woman, who he conceived a child with? Now that would mean not only did you give his son off as a slave, but you also killed his lover in cold blood. Now I don't know much about the so-called Dark King, but if I was you, I'd be fearing for that man coming for revenge. Danzo rose to his feet after speaking, then the aged Marine moved around his desk. Though that's just silly speculation, which in reality is nothing to fuss over. However, let's discuss something a little more important. Sakazuki took a hard swallow. He feared no man. Though Silver's Rayleigh wasn't just any man. He was a walking legend and, as the rumors say, a true monster in combat. More important than this boy. If he really is that man's son, we should take him from Kaden. Force him to show us where his father is. Sakazuki shouted in rage, causing Danzo to lean on his desk and laugh once more. What's the matter? Want to find Rayleigh before he finds you? Danzo asked, rather enjoying his pupil's position. Cause to be honest, I could care less about finding that man. So don't waste your time trying to discover if that boy is linked with him. Why you? Please. Sakazuki, spare me and listen to what I have to say. Danzo spoke quickly, cutting the man off. Grabbing another folder off his desk, but tossing this one to Sakazuki. We have something serious to discuss. Sakazuki caught the folder and began digging through its contents. What the hell is this? The Marine asked, glaring at Danzo with anger. It's your discharge papers. You are being kicked out of the Marines and stripped of your title. Danzo replied emotionlessly, walking over to the Marine's side. Why is this happening? Sakazuki yelled, magma leaking out of his body. We both know you're not on the best terms with Sengoku. So I may have altered your field report a little. Then showed him my edited version of what you did. Danzo revealed with a small smile, causing Sakazuki to jerk out of his chair. Calm down, Sakazuki, and listen to me. Calm down. You're telling me to calm down. Sakazuki roared in anger, preparing to fight his former superior. You wrecked everything I spent my life building up. Danzo turned his back to the man, knowing he wouldn't attack. Yes, I guess I did do that, but not without reason. See, I have a vision to change this world and the government that rules it. Danzo began, as he stopped and looked to the ceiling. To do this I need a man of your strength and values. To work a certain angle for me. So I demolished your career so you wouldn't have much of an opportunity to refuse my offer. You're a bastard, Danzo, but... Sakazuki took a pause and gripped his fist tightly. He didn't have many options to turn to. The Navy was his entire life. I'll work for you. Just tell me what I must do. Danzo turned back around with a satisfied smirk. My trust in you is well placed, Sakazuki. Don't worry, you shall be rewarded in the future for your troubles. The Admiral spoke calmly, before pulling a small envelope from his sleeve. But for now, let's talk what you will be doing for me. So tell me, how do you feel about dying? XXXXXXXXX with Naruto at Vivi's room. Naruto walked into the medium-sized guest room, where Vivi would be sleeping during her stay at Mariajoy. Without uttering a single word, The blonde tossed the girl's bag onto the large and neatly made bed. Welcome to your room. The bathroom is 2 doors down to the right and the 4 doors to your left. Is where your father and his guards will be staying. Naruto droned out without using any enthusiasm behind his words. Vivi, who was standing at the door frame with Konohamaru, huffed in annoyance. What's your problem? Vivi asked in a rather agitated tone, walking up to Naruto and tapping him on the chest. You've been nothing but rude to me. I've done nothing to you, so why don't you try and act a little more kind? Naruto brushed the girl off and gave a fierce gaze. Would you be happy living the life that I am? Would you be kind to someone who you don't know? Naruto took a deep breath before walking off. Just cause you aren't like Kaden and his bastard son doesn't mean I'll treat you with respect. People like you have to earn my respect. People like me. Vivi repeated the blonde's words, her anger slowly rising. Me and you are exactly the same. Naruto stopped by Konohamaru's side, his lips forming a small smile. That's twice Vivi had proven to him that she wasn't like the other nobles he knew, making the blonde think to himself that the princess wasn't so bad. All right, spoiled Harem. Don't forget dinner is in a few hours. Naruto replied, making his way out of the doorframe. Konohamaru will take the first shift in watching over you. Vivi's cheeks turned red before she smirked. All right, Whisker-kun, see you soon. The blue-haired princess called out, earning a snicker from Konohamaru. On the outside of the room, Naruto rolled his eyes at the princess's new name for him. However, he quickly frowned as he noticed Kaden approaching. The celestial dragon was carrying a whip in hand and a scowl on his face. Seeing this, Naruto got an idea in his head. So the blonde slave started to walk closer to the man. Oh, are we starting already, Kaden-chan? You still remember the safe word? Naruto asked with a small grin. He wanted Kaden to attack him. Then the blonde would have a chance to finally kill the man. I swear, brat, I'm going to beat you within an inch of your life. Now come with me. Kaden spoke in a hushed tone, not wanting the king and his men to hear him. Naruto looked to the man and frowned. He wasn't wearing the key to his shackles. This complicates things, the blonde thought to himself. Excuse me, is everything all right here? A strong and unfamiliar voice asked, grabbing both Kaden and Naruto's attention. Both slave and master looked down the hallway to find a tall and imitating man with dark skin, with medium-length black hair, garbed in a long light green tunic that was overlapped by a large dark green coat draped over him. Naruto took an extra interest into the large blue sword attached to his hip, thinking to himself about how much he missed his own sword. Kaden gave the man a false smile. Yes, everything is alright, Chaka-san, I'm just disciplining a slave. This boy needs some sense placed into him. Kaden spoke smoothly, not wanting to give off the wrong impression, even though now it was too late and Naruto knew it. Oh, that's wonderful, discipline is always needed for our youth. Chaka spoke up, surprising Naruto and Kaden both with his words. In fact, I heard this boy mumbled some insults at me and my comrades. Mind if I'm the one to deliver the punishment? Kaden let a dark smirk slip out. He could punish Naruto without dirtying his own hands. Please be my guest, Chaka-san. The noble replied, pointing down to the blonde. Chaka drew his sword and stalked over to Naruto, looking down to the boy with a hard gaze. Then out of nowhere, he slowly poked Naruto with his finger, right on the blonde's forehead. Now see what you made me do. Promise me you'll start behaving or I'll come back to punish you again. Chaka spoke in a tone that one would use when scolding a small child. Naruto smirked. He caught onto what the man was doing. Yes, I won't misbehave again, the future pirate replied, looking over to a fuming Kaden. Chaka placed his sword back into its sheath, before smiling. Good, now run along. The guard spoke, before shooing Naruto away with his hands. Yes, Chaka-san, Naruto replied with a small bow. Pissing Kaden off was one way to win his respect. Or so the blonde thought before he ran off, leaving the two men alone. Where do you get off? Kaden growled in anger, before he noticed Chaka walk past him. He's just a boy, the man replied in a low voice, before he continued down the hallway, leaving Kaden to brew in his own anger. XXXXXXXXX with Vivi and Konohamaru. Vivi sat on the guest room bed with Konohamaru. The two children were busy laughing and getting to know each other. Konohamaru has learned many things about Vivi, like how she was 11 years old. only 1 year younger than his older brother. Konohamaru also listened to Vivi tell dozens of stories about her life in Alabaster. On the other hand, Konohamaru didn't share much with Vivi about his own life. This being not because he didn't trust the young princess. He just didn't want to spoil the mood. However, for the entire length of the conversation, Vivi wanted to ask Konohamaru about how his life was. Or how he became a slave to Kaden. Though the blue-haired girl didn't want to cross any boundaries. Hey Vivi-sama. Just Vivi, remember we are friends Konohamaru-kun. The princess interjected, correcting the small boy. He's sorry about that Vivi-chan. The small boy replied, awkwardly, rubbing the backside of his head. But I wanted to ask you something. Vivi gave a soft smile, which in turn caused the slave to form a wide grin. Sure Konohamaru, ask anything you want. Konohamaru looked down to the floor and rubbed his arm, not knowing where to start with his question. What's the outside world like? Is it really as amazing as Naruto ni always tells me? Vivi frowned, she didn't know how to properly answer Konohamaru's question. After all, the outside world is a pretty wide range of things. However, it suddenly hit her, why would Konohamaru ask such a question? Would it mean he has never been outside of Mariajoy? And if Naruto has told him of the outside world, are they actually brothers? Vivi quickly shook those questions out of her head. Yes Konohamaru, your brother is right. The world is a very wonderful place. The princess replied with a false smile, trying her best to keep the boy's spirits up. Why would you ask such a question? Konohamaru started to awkwardly fiddle with his fingers. However, an abrupt cough grabbed his and the princess's attention. Hello Tu-chan. Vivi greeted happily, waving towards the door. Konohamaru looked over his shoulder to the king, who was standing with his arms crossed. The small slave also took notice to the man's slight frown and felt his stomach begin to turn. Hello Vivi-chan, how are you and young Konohamaru doing? Cobra asked, walking towards the bed slowly. We are doing fine Tu-chan, what brings you here? The princess replied, analyzing her father. She could tell when something was troubling the man. Oh, I just got done talking with Chaka and Ingram. So I thought I'd stop by before dinner and speak with you. The king explained, stopping at the edge of the bed. Konohamaru-san, could you give me and my daughter some privacy? Konohamaru nearly jumped off the bed and quickly bowed to the man. Of course Cobra-sama, would you like anything else before I leave? The king sighed and bent down to the boy, placing a firm hand on Konohamaru's shoulder. Don't be so nervous Konohamaru-kun, I won't harm you. The king spoke in a soft voice, causing the slave to look up. All I ask is you and your brother be at attendance for tonight's dinner. Of course Cobra-sama. Konohamaru spoke in a more relaxed tone, rising up and darting out of the room. The king watched the boy leave with a slight frown. Listen to me Vivi, I'm only going to say this once. The father began to speak. Still looking in the direction Konohamaru ran off in. XXXXXXXXX. Few hours later, in Kaden's dining room. Naruto stood off to the side, with Konohamaru and his fellow slaves by his side. They were all holding various plates, with large mounds of exotic meats and fruits. Unfortunately, the starving slaves were unable to eat any of the delicious food in their possession. Instead they were forked to deliver food to Kaden and his guests, while fighting off the hungry growls of their stomachs. All right slaves, bring in the appetizers. The overweight celestial dragon ordered, while clapping his hands together. Naruto rolled his eyes, thinking food was the last thing the man needed. Regardless of his thoughts however, Naruto walked towards the table with his fellow slaves. One by one each person began to place down a platter of food. Naruto placed his down between Vivi and one of her father's guards' Pell. Enjoy your meal spoiled Haim. Naruto whispered into her ear, before standing straight up and waiting for Kaden's next order. Vivi growled under her breath, she wasn't spoiled and she didn't appreciate the blonde's name for her. Her father's guard Pell on the other hand, heard Naruto's nickname, and even though he knew Vivi wasn't spoiled, the name still gave the warrior a small grin. Konohamaru was standing on the other side of the table. He was standing between Chaka and Ingram. I wonder if Vivi-chan and Naruto-ni will start to get along. The brown-haired slave thought to himself, giving his brother and new friend a warm smile. Cobra, who was at the end of the table, acing Kaden, who was at the opposing side, looked around the table with an honest smile. This is quite a plentiful spread, Kaden-san. The king spoke in a rather off tone. He felt uncomfortable eating in front of starving slaves. Kaden grinned as he reached out for a piece of sea king meat. It's the finest food money can buy, plus you haven't seen anything yet. Wait till you see what my master chef has prepared. The noble replied, already beginning to devour the meat in hand. While he did this, Kaden mumbled something with a full mouth. Waving his right hand up and down, Vivi looked towards the man with disgust, as did the rest of her family and friends. However, Kozan, who was seated close to his father, spoke up. He is trying to tell all you slaves to leave at once. Kaden took a rode swallow and discarded the sea king bone, which had been picked clean. No, you fool, that's not what I said. I want everyone, except Naruto and Konohamaru, to leave. Kaden explained, as he was planning to punish Naruto in some way. This punishment was to force Naruto and the one person he cared about to watch everyone eat while they starved. The king watched as one by one slaves begin to bow, before turning around and walking off. Soon enough all the slaves disappeared, besides the two children. I don't know what this man is planning, but this could work for us. Cobra thought to himself, giving a nod to Chaka, Pell and Ingram. You know, Kaden-sama, I'm curious about your two slaves here. Ingram spoke up, motioning to Naruto and Konohamaru. Tell me, are they your only two children slaves? Kaden reached out for a glass of wine. It depends by your definition of children. The man spoke truthfully, taking a sip from his wine. Though if we go by my definition, then yes, Naruto and Konohamaru are the only children. We did have a few other younger slaves, but they all died. I'm sorry to hear of that. Ingram spoke sadly, looking down and wondering to himself as to just how many children died while working for Kaden. Don't apologize, they were terrible slaves, too weak if you ask me. Nothing like young Naruto and Konohamaru here. Kaden explained, showing his disregard for human life. Pell raised an eyebrow. Now these two are only children. They can't possibly be that great of slaves, since they are too weak for any form of serious manual labor. Chaka pointed towards his friend and nodded. Pell has a point, why keep such weak slaves? I'm sure you could easily find some more capable replacements. That I could, but these boys both have their value. Kaden replied, continuing to eat his meal. Besides, they are not as weak as you would think. See my son's face. He used to look like me when I was young and handsome. Though after little Naruto here punched him once, look what happened. Naruto let a small smirk grace his lips, proud of his actions. Naruto-kun must pack quite the punch. Cobra chuckled, earning a few nods and a grunt from Kozan. But all this talk has given me an idea. Kaden raised an eyebrow. Oh, tell me, Cobra-san, what exactly are you thinking? The king rubbed his chin, then began to survey the room, taking only a moment to observe every person at the table. I would like to purchase your two slaves Naruto and Konohamaru. The king began, revealing his hidden motive. My daughter has no friends back at my kingdom. So I have these two would make fine companions for her. Naruto and Konohamaru's eye both grew wide. Did he really just say he was willing to buy them? Pell, Chaka and Ingram took their eyes away from their king, silently gazing off to Kaden, hoping the man would believe the lie. However, the man remained silent. You know, Cobra-sama has a very good point. Ingram chimed in, trying to assist his king. Vivi-sama doesn't have many friends. So two strong and dependable boys like these two could not only entertain her, but maybe in the near future protect her. Pell nodded to his peer's statement. And if they would need any form of training, they could work with me and Chaka. Yes, we could mold them into fine protectors. Chaka replied. Kaden looked at the king, trying to gauge the man's motives. You say you want friends for your daughter, who would also be able to protect her. That much I understand, but why do you want two of my slaves? It's simple really, slavery is outlawed in my kingdom, and I'm not going to make it legal just for my daughter. I could purchase some from the slave market. However, that would look rather bad on my character. The king explained, trying his hardest to fool the celestial dragon. So you want to buy Naruto and Konohamaru? All because you can do so without anyone wondering where you obtained them. Kaden summarized, thinking he has the king figured okay. Precisely. The king lied through his teeth. Kaden nodded and began to think to himself. Young princess, is what your father says true? Do you not have any friends within your kingdom? Vivi became a little nervous. Kaden and his son creeped her out. But she swallowed her feelings and nodded. Yes, Kaden-sama. The blue-haired princess spoke in a low voice. That's why I would like my 2-san to buy Konohamaru-san and Naruto. Konohamaru became slightly happy at this development, thinking finally he and Naruto both could be free from Kaden, even if they had to work for the king. Naruto on the other hand rolled his eyes. He could clearly tell the king and his men were lying, or at least telling Kaden a half-truth, though the blonde didn't understand their purpose behind trying to buy him and Konohamaru. Well, if you want to buy them I shall allow it, but no, neither boy comes cheap. Kaden explained with a vile smirk. Naruto was a little surprised by this development, not Inking Kaden would agree to selling him. I'm glad you are willing to make a deal. So tell me, what is your price? The king asked, folding his arms. Money shouldn't be an issue. Kaden smirked. Glad to hear that, now let me think. For Konohamaru I'd sell him for 350 million belly. Everyone looked at the man with gaping mouths. That's a serious amount of money just for one slave. No, Kaden-sama, maybe we could bargain a little bit. Surely this boy isn't worth that much money. Ingram spoke up, still a little shocked by the man's price. No, the price will stay at 350 million belly. Young Kono. Hamaru means too much for me to just give him away. He has been with me since the moment his mother gave birth to him. Kaden explained, giving Konohamaru a dark grin. And even though she died giving birth, young Konohamaru has served me well. Though it was a fair trade-off, she wasn't much of a slave. Vivi brought a hand to her mouth, while Naruto just shook in anger. Both of them upset for the same reason, and that being Konohamaru. The boy who always smiled, even when a man was mocking his mother right in front of him, had to stand and listen to Kaden's harsh words. Cobra gripped his fists under the table. Fine, like I said, money isn't an issue. Now how much for Naruto? The king asked, trying to hide the anger in his voice. Kaden brought a hand to his lips. Now that is a very good question. See, Naruto-kun isn't like most slaves, his value is pretty high. Kaden began, eyeballing the blonde slave. I would estimate 1 billion belly, but honestly I believe that price is a little low. At this moment everyone looked at the blonde with a questioning gaze. However, not a single person could speak. That's outrageous, how could one boy be worth that much? Cobra finally shouted, asking the question that was on everyone's mind. Kaden chuckled at the king's reaction and pointed at Naruto. You see the cuffs on young Naruto. They are made from kairoseki, a material used to cancel out devil fruits. Pell gasped, understanding where the man was going. This caused Kaden to smirk. Yes, young Naruto here has eaten a devil fruit, and a Logia type at that. So this makes him incredibly rare as a slave. Not to mention the man who captured him said something about Naruto using haki, which according to him, is a skill generally reserved for people of vice admiral skill or higher. Kaden then scoffed as he waved a hand around. Though it's not like Naruto here could fight a vice admiral. Hell, him and his treacherous mother attacked one. Why don't you tell everyone how that played out, Naruto-kun? Naruto looked down, his hair overshadowing his eyes, causing Kaden and his son to laugh. What's the matter, brat? You normally have some witty retort. Kaden yelled out, slapping the table as he laughed. Vivi looked over to the blonde and was filled with compassion for the boy. Whatever happened to him pained him deeply. I want to help him, but I don't know how. Even Huff, if I did he wouldn't accept my help. The princess thought to herself. Cobra cleared his throat as he noticed Naruto's pained look. What happened with him isn't important. What is important, however, is that you come down on your price. The king spoke up, wanting to buy the boys and take them away from Kaden even more than ever now. The celestial dragon stopped laughing and gave the king a hard gaze. I will not lower my price, either buy them or don't. I really couldn't care less. Ingram turned to his king, knowing the man better than anyone. So he knew Cobra was still willing to buy the two slaves. But in reality they didn't have the money to do so. Cobra-sama, I'm sorry, but this is a deal we can't make. We have to back off. The white-haired man advised to his king. Cobra bit his lips. I know, Ingram. And I'm sorry, Kaden, but we cannot make a deal with you. The noble waved the king off, not caring about a thing. That's fine with me, Cobra-san. Vivi jerked out of her seat and gave a bow. Please excuse me, I'm not hungry. The small princess announced to the table. Naruto, could you and Konohamaru escort me to my room? Naruto pushed the girl's chair back into the table. Yes, we will. The blonde replied in a low voice, walking off to leave the men to their meals. Though everyone save Kaden and Kozen didn't seem in the mood for food either. XXXXXXXXXX at Vivi's room. Naruto walked into the large guest room, with Vivi and Konohamaru right behind him. Then without a warning Naruto slammed the door and pointed a finger at Vivi. Mind tell me what all that was? Why in the world was your father trying to buy us? Naruto asked in a low voice. Cause I don't believe the lies he was telling Kaden. Vivi looked down. Me and my family hate slavery, my two-san especially hates child slavery. Though there isn't much we can do about it. Slavery is everywhere, but he was hoping to at least bet your freedom. Konohamaru nearly jumped onto the girl. Really he was going to let us go free. The brown-haired slave shouted almost too loudly. Naruto and Vivi both quickly found their hands clapped onto the boy's mouth, forcing them to lock eyes, causing Vivi to slightly blush. Even more so when she noticed their hands touching. Quickly backing away, the princess readjusted herself. Yes, that was the plan, but we didn't figure he would ask such high prices. That's Kaden for you. Naruto replied in an angered tone. He's a real bastard, but tell me something, spoiled Harem. Do you really want to help us? Vivi's eyebrow twitched. If you don't quit calling me that name I might just let you stay here. For now though, yes, I do want to help you. Naruto smiled. Vivi wasn't so bad, but getting under her skin was kind of fun. Alright then, you're going to help me and Kono escape. Naruto explained, giving the girl and his brother a grin. And we are going to use my master plan. Ni-chan, you mean the one you tried to tell me this morning? Konohamaru asked with a little enthusiasm and Naruto nodded. Well, before you tell me any plan I have two conditions. Vivi revealed, holding out two fingers. Naruto crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow. Alright, let's hear your conditions, spoiled Harem. Vivi growled and held up a third finger. Okay, 3 conditions. Don't call me that again. The blue-haired girl more ordered than anything. Earning a snicker from Konohamaru. Naruto rolled his eyes. I'll think about it. What's the other 2? The blonde asked. One, you tell me about yourself and start being nicer to me. And the second one I'll tell you after you are free. The princess replied with a smirk. Naruto grinned. He didn't have a problem with Vivi's conditions. So he held his hand out for the girl to shake. Alright Vivi, if we are going to be partners, let me introduce myself. Few know my name, so take pride in my trust. My name is Silver's Naruto, the Dark Prince. Vivi cocked her head to the side, confused by the blonde's title. Dark Prince. The noble princess mumbled with confusion. What in the world is that? Naruto smirked. It's a name I like to go by. Just like my two-san Silver's Rayleigh, the Dark King and First Mate of Galdi. Roger the Pirate King. Vivi looked at Naruto with a gaping mouth. She was standing in the presence of the son of the notorious Silver's Rayleigh. A pirate who was known throughout the entire world for his street rank and being the second-hand man of the Pirate King himself. Konohamaru giggled at the princess's reaction and quickly jumped in front of the pair. Don't forget to mention your uncle is Red Hair Shanks. The small boy chuckled happily. Vivi's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Red Hair Shanks was a pirate growing in fame throughout the world. According to her father, the world government, T has labeled Shanks as one of the most dangerous pirates alive. Kono, did you really have to mention my uncle? Naruto asked, pinching the bridge of his nose. Just cause I said who my two-san was. Does not mean I was ready to tell her everything about me. Konohamaru puffed out his cheek and squinted his eyebrows. But Ni-chan, you promised Vivi-san you'd tell her everything about you. The small boy whined. Naruto leaned against the wall and shook his head. To think my own little brother would turn against me. What am I going to do with you? Naruto smirked as he looked up to Vivi. Though he does have a point. I agreed to tell you about me. And my two-san raised me to be a man of my word. So what would you like to know about me? Eventually getting over her shock, Vivi quickly thought of her first question. Tell me if I'm right, you and Konohamaru-kun are not really brothers. Naruto simply nodded to the question while Konohamaru looked down. I thought as much. Konohamaru is too nice to be your little brother. Konohamaru smiled at the princess's comment. Naruto on the other hand chuckled while shaking his head. He knew the princess was trying to cheer Konohamaru, when she noticed his depressed look. Naruto was starting to gaining a lot of respect for her. Your words wound me, spoiled Harem. Naruto replied, causing the girl to huff in annoyance. But don't be fooled, me and Konohamaru are brothers in every sense of the word. I'll protect him with my life. I'm never going to let someone I care for die. That's a promise of a lifetime. Vivi was a little surprised by his choice of words. They weren't common words for a 12-year-old boy, but Naruto was everything except normal. I have one more question. Vivi revealed, eyeing Naruto carefully. How did you end up here, and what exactly did Kaden mean earlier? What happened with you and your Ka-chan? Naruto's eyes flared with anger, his memory taken not only back to what Kaden had said, but he also remembered the demise of his mother, which caused the boy to feel a small ache in his heart. For starters, Kaden and Kozen tried to take my Ka-chan with them against her will. She refused to even acknowledge them. So Kozen beat her. He even tried to kill me. But he didn't account for my devil fruit powers. So I defended my helpless Ka-chan and punched the shit out of that bastard. I would have killed them both. Naruto let a grin slip onto his face, but he quickly frowned. Though they had a vice admiral accompanying them, I tried to fight the man, but he was physically stronger than me. Plus I could tell he possessed way more battle experience than me. So I lost horribly, and in result he killed my Ka-chan and captured me. Vivi was left stunned, tears forming in the corner of her eyes. She quickly held her arms out and rushed the blonde, catching him a little off guard as she gripped tightly onto his body. What are you doing? The blonde-haired child quickly mumbled, his voice dull and emotionless. I don't want your sympathy. And I certainly don't want to be looked down upon for what happened. I'm perfectly fine. I know what it's like to lose a mother. Vivi mumbled into his chest, leaving the blonde child stunned. I know the hurt and the pain you have. I'm not trying to give you any pity, I'm trying to tell you that you don't have to close yourself off. Naruto grabbed the girl's shoulders and broke her embrace. How did your Ka-chan die? Naruto asked seriously, while Konohamaru looked at the princess with a small amount of interest. Vivi looked down and took a hard swallow. It wasn't a pleasant memory for her to remember. When I was younger there was an attempt on my life. The assassin failed in killing me, but he succeeded in taking my Ka-chan's life. I would have died as well. But Pell came to my rescue. Though Pell tried to keep my Ka-chan alive, the assassin fled. We never even found out who the killer was or why he did it. Naruto looked down and whoa. Ndered, what kind of world he was born into. There was nothing in the world except hardship, pain and loss. Quite frankly, the blonde-haired child was sick of all war, famine, slavery and death. I'm sorry for your loss, Vivi. I know losing your Ka-chan must have been awful. Naruto spoke in a low voice, surprising the blue-haired princess by using her name. But let's not dwell on the past. Let me explain how you can help me and Konohamaru escape. What's the plan, Ni-chan? Konohamaru asked, excited to finally hear his older brother's plan. Naruto started to rattle his cuffs. Simple, we get these off me. These damn cuffs are a real pain in my ass. They block my devil fruit powers and weaken my body drastically, so my hockey abilities have also suffered from the strain. Vivi brought a hand to her chin. And how can I help to get those off? Naruto let a smirk slip past his lips. You steal the key, you're a guest and a noble guest at that. You can walk around this estate without anyone questioning what you are up to. Naruto explained, causing Vivi to turn pale. But I'm not a criminal. The princess stammered nervously, not feeling too comfortable in stealing from Kaden. Hey please, spoiled Harem, you won't be a criminal. I would say you would be more of a thief. Naruto replied in a casual tone. That's the same thing. Vivi nearly yelled back. Naruto held a finger up to interject the girl. No, a criminal is someone who gets caught. A thief is someone who steals and never gets caught. Try to be a thief if you wish to help us, a criminal would only make things worse. Konohamaru giggled at his older brother's comment. Yeah, Vivi-san, stealing isn't that hard. Naruto ni steals stuff from me all the time. Vivi grew a tick mark on her head. You're a bad example for an older brother. Vivi scolded, striking the blonde over his head. Then as Naruto nursed his bump, she bent down to the small slave. Remember, Konohamaru, never be a thief, murderer or a pervert. Street. I sweet and innocent, and don't be like your brother. Konohamaru gave a small laugh and looked towards his brother figure. Ah, but Naruto ni is so cool, I want to be a pirate in his crew when we escape. Vivi's head snapped to the side as she looked at the blonde-haired pirate to be. What? Naruto asked, shrugging his shoulders. My two-san is Silver's Rayleigh and my uncle is Red Hair Shanks. You really surprised that me and my little brother are going to be pirates? Vivi seemed to deflate a little. I should have seen it coming, but do you really have to go from a life of hardship straight into a life on the run? Naruto let out a small smile, showing his canines. Trust me, spoiled Harem, once I'm out of here, life on the run will be the only option for me. The blonde devil fruit user explained, the hidden meaning of his words going over her head. Don't worry Vivi-san, me and Naruto ni will look out for each other. Plus when we get our crew we will be the strongest pirate crew in all the seas combined. The small slave proclaimed proudly, giving the princess a wide grin. Hee, if you wanted you could even join our crew. Vivi's eyes grew wide and she began to shake her hands widely. I don't know about that, Konohamaru-kun. I don't think I would be cut out for the pirate lifestyle. The blue-haired girl admitted, picturing herself with an eye patch and a sword. Then quick, Kaylee shuddering and talking the thought out of her head. But thanks for the offer. Naruto scoffed. Please, I'm the captain and the first crew member we take will be my first mate. And I'm sure as hell not taking some spoiled princess as my first mate. I'd rather have someone with a little more flair. Vivi's eyebrow twitched. I'm going to kill him. The princess thought to herself, as his nickname. Me for her was starting to grow annoying. Konohamaru on the other hand tossed his hands up in protest. What, I thought I was your first mate. The small boy whined, feeling a little hurt that his brother didn't see him as a first mate. Naruto smiled and poked Konohamaru on his forehead, making the small slave recoil back. Please Kono, you're too young to be my first mate. Besides, I still have to train you to be a strong pirate when we escape. Naruto explained quickly, bringing the boy in and burying a fist in his hair. So don't be such a buzzkill. You'll still be an important member of the Fujin Pirates. Fujin Pirates? Vivi mumbled the name with confusion. You've already came up with a name for your crew. Naruto gave a slight nod. Yeah, I've been planning to be a pirate for a long time. So since my devil fruit is the K's no mi. I think the Fujin Pirates would be an acceptable name for my crew. Kick-ass name Ni-chan. Konohamaru shouted happily, quickly embracing the name he would sail under. Naruto cocked a grin and placed his hands on his hips. Hey, I know right, but none of that matters at the moment. What does matter is Vivi stealing the key to my cuffs. Naruto began, placing all his focus on the princess. You will help us, won't you? Vivi looked into Naruto's eyes for a moment and thought to herself. She could help the blonde and risk getting caught. Or she could ignore him and just leave him be. Vivi knew the latter wasn't even a proper option. Yeah, I'll help you, Vivi replied, causing Naruto to nod and Konohamaru to grin. We can devise a proper plan tomorrow. Since my two-san will be meeting with other dignitaries tomorrow, me and Ingram were going to explore the city. We can take you two along and include Ingram in on the plan, he always has a good plan for any scenario. So maybe he can make obtaining the key to your cuffs and aiding your escape easier. Naruto pondered on Vivi's words for a moment. He trusted her and knew she really wanted to help him. But he didn't know this Ingram guy too well. Though if the princess trusted him, Naruto figured he might as well go along with it. Alright, spoiled Harem, that should be acceptable. Come on Konohamaru, let's go to our room. Kaden and everyone should be finishing dinner. Naruto pointed out, slowly walking towards the door. Wouldn't want him to walk in while we are plotting to escape. Konohamaru nodded and ran after his brother. Vivi on the other hand sighed and walked to her bed, silently hoping she would be able to help both boys in escaping from their captors. XXXXXXXXXX. The next day, Town Square. Naruto stood passively in the main square of Mariajoy. He was currently located a few feet away from Vivi, Ingram and Konohamaru, all of whom were sitting on the edge of a large water fountain. Naruto could hear the three of them discussing a plan to help steal the key to Naruto's cuff. However, Naruto decided to skip out on this conversation. Instead, he was busy watching the citizens of Mariajoy go through their daily routine. This was his first time outside of Kaiden's estate and it made Naruto absolutely sick. Everywhere he looked he saw noble men, women and children, of whom were abusing their very own slave. It's been a few years since Fisher Tiger attacked and freed as many slaves he could. But from what I see his little liberation did nothing. Slavery still runs rampant in Mariajoy. But I'm going to fix this. Naruto thought to himself, already making mental notes of key places to attack. Once he was freed from his Kairoseki restraints. Though while Naruto was making observations in his head, Vivi started to call out to him. Naruto, come over here. The blonde-haired slave looked over to the princess, who was motioning for him to come over to her. He sighed and complied to her request. What do you need? Naruto asked in a bored tone, causing Vivi to sigh as well. Well, while you were off staring at a wall, the three of us came up with a plan to snatch the key. Vivi explained, a little irritated by the blonde's attitude. Naruto scoffed. For one, I was scoping the area. He informed, slightly piquing Ingram's interest. But that's not of importance, just tell me your plan. TCH whatever Whisker-kun. Vivi replied, folding her arms and turning away. Ingram can explain the plan to you. Naruto paid little notice to the princess and looked up to the tall man. All right, you have my attention, so what's the plan? The blonde slave asked calmly. The plan is simple, during dinner Vivi will be in bed because she is sick. Ingram began, scrunching his fingers when saying sick. Then while everyone is busy eating, she will snatch the key out of Kaiden's room and give it to you. Naruto folded his arms and closed his eyes. That's the best you three could come up with. What happens if the key isn't in his room? Naruto asked, causing Vivi and Ingram to fall over. Told you he would hate it. Konohamaru chimed in. Ingram rose to his feet and dusted himself off. Well, it's the best plan we've got, and from the fact that you are still a slave, I can assume you don't have a plan of your own. The man shot back, trying to shoot the blonde down and defend his plan. You're correct, I don't have a plan to escape on my own. My main plan was to wait till my uncle and father discovered my mother's demise and my current whereabouts. Then they'd old come here and burn this shithole to the ground. Naruto explained lazily, confusing Ingram as he didn't know the blonde had any living relatives. And what makes you think your uncle and father could save you? This is Mariajoy, the security here is nothing to scoff at. So I doubt two men could storm in here and save you. Ingram replied, trying to explain logic to the child. Naruto cocked a smirk. Oh, how he was begging to enjoy doing this. Let me be a little more descriptive. See, my father Silver's Rayleigh and my uncle Red Hair Shanks and his crew would come here and slaughter every single man, woman or child who would try to stand in their way. Naruto leaned closely into Ingram. But honestly, I don't want them to save me. 'Cause if anyone is turning this place upside, it will be me. Ingram turned pale. Kaiden didn't even know what he was doing. Keeping a child like Naruto as a slave wasn't a ticking time bomb. It was a death sentence. Does Kaiden? No, he doesn't know, and it's going to stay that way. Naruto quickly replied, cutting the man off. You are a good man, Ingram, I can see it in your eyes and the way you speak. So I'm going to ask you to stay quiet. My lineage can pose some problems for me at the moment. Quote. Konohamaru watched this interaction with little emotion. He already knew everything that Naruto was saying and he didn't really care to hear it again. Vivi on the other hand didn't even think of the possibility of Naruto's family coming here. It would without a doubt be a bloodbath. Naruto ran a hand through his hair, causing his cuffs to rattle. Though let's forget about my family. I will agree with the little plan you have cooked up. It is a piss-poor plan at best, but it should get the job done. The blonde-winged man began. Just remember, spoiled Harem don't get caught. Vivi puffed her cheeks out and turned red in anger. Konohamaru began silently snickering to himself, while Ingram merely rose to his feet and sighed. Come on children, Cobra-sama's meeting should be ending soon. So let's go make our way to him. The king's advisor proposed, already walking away from the fountain. Vivi jumped to her feet and stuck her tongue out at Naruto. Then she quickly walked after her caretaker. Brat. Naruto mumbled, motioning for his brother to follow him. Konohamaru giggled at his brother's interaction with the princess. You are starting to act more of yourself around her, Ni-chan. The small boy taunted. I think you are starting to like her. Naruto's eyebrow twitched as he started to grumble something. Then by lifting his hand up, Naruto flicked Konohamaru on the forehead. Damn you, Ni-chan. Konohamaru growled while rubbing his forehead. Though his eyes grew wide when he noticed Naruto was already walking off. Hey bastard, don't leave me. Ingram looked over his shoulders at the two slaves. Chills running down his spine when he looked at Naruto. He couldn't take the image of Naruto's family burning this place to the ground out of his head. It was a truly frightening thought. He then changed his view to Vivi, who was skipping rather happily in front of him. Thinking, what if Naruto's family came while they were staying at Mariajoy? He liked to think that Pell, Chaka and himself personally were all fairly strong. However, compared to a legend like Silver's Rayleigh and a monster like Red Hair Shanks, the gap in their strength was too large to even compare. So if it boiled down to where he might have to fight those two men to protect Vivi and the king, he didn't know what he would do. Something the matter, Ingram-san? Naruto asked out of the blue, causing the man to stiffen up. Giving the blonde-haired child a fake smile, Ingram shook his head. No, everything is fine, Naruto. I was merely lost in thought, that was all. Naruto locked eyes with the tall man. You know, my aunt taught me how to tell if someone was lying or hiding something. To put it bluntly, Ingram-san, why don't you start being a little more open with me? The blonde slave advised, giving a small smile. After all, you don't see me keeping secrets from you. Ingram bit the bottom of his lip. Naruto was an unusual child, and a frightening one at that. He was a Logia-type devil fruit user and surprisingly insightful and observant for his age. Fine, Naruto-kun, let's talk then. Ingram offered as he started to walk alongside Naruto and Konohamaru, allowing for Vivi to lead the group of four. What are your plans after Vivi gets you the key to your cuffs? Naruto chuckled and looked forward to Vivi, who was oblivious to the conversation. Do you want me to tell you what you would like to hear, or what I'm actually going to do? The blonde slave asked, slightly piquing Konohamaru's interest. He didn't know what his brother's plans were, and he would like to find out. I believe I already have your plans figured out. I guess a better question is, when will you do it? The king's advisor asked, slightly tensing up as Naruto remained silent. If you were worried about your king and spoiled Harem being caught up in my escape plans. Like I would assume you are, don't be. I plan to make my escape after you all leave Mariajoy. Naruto informed. Look, at Ingram with a calm and collected expression. I'm the son of a pirate, Ingram-san, not a monster. You all are trying to help me and my brother. So it is only fair I look out for your well-being as well. Ingram was a little taken back by Naruto's words, not expecting such thinking from a boy his age. Konohamaru was grinning ear to ear. He didn't learn anything about Naruto's plans, though he at least knows he is looking out for Vivi and her family. Ni-chan is starting to trust people better and show how kind you really are. The small slave thought to himself happily. Thank you, Naruto. I worry about the king and his daughter's safety. They are like family to me. The large man explained, causing Naruto to nod. Though I must commend you, I would never expect a boy of your age to be so level-headed and considerate. Naruto's eyebrow twitched from the shot at his age, but he let it slide. It's a value I learned from my uncle and father. Always value your comrades and take their well-being above your own. Don't forget that friends and family are worth more than any treasure. Ingram nodded at his words. From the way Naruto spoke of his family, they didn't seem like the monsters that the government made them out to be. In fact, they seemed like kind men who values their friends and family. The king's advisor was about to continue his conversation, but the noise of someone being slapped grabbed his attention. Naruto and Konohamaru looked forward to find Vivi on her backside. A large man smirking over top of her. Watch where you are going, brat. The man shouted, slowly chuckling to himself. See what happens when you don't pay attention. You run into people. Naruto snarled. He didn't see what happened, but from looking at the position of the man's body it was easy to tell. He had struck Vivi on purpose. She didn't run into anyone. Ingram glared holes into the man. He wanted to thrash the man here and now. The reason he restrained himself was because the man was the king of Drum Kingdom, King Wapol. Attacking the man standing in front of him could spark a war. Konohamaru looked down. He wanted to help Vivi, but he couldn't do anything. He felt weak and pathetic. Vivi rose to her feet and began dusting herself off. Then, by looking up to the large king and the guards behind him, she smiled. My apologies, Wapol-sama. I will try to be more careful in the future. She spoke sincerely, giving the man a bow. Please forgive me. Wapol gritted his teeth and brushed past Vivi. Yeah, whatever. Come on men, let's get back to Drum. The large man shouted, as one by one, Wapol and his men walked past Naruto. The blonde only noticing one of the men looking towards Vivi with a shed of remorse. If Naruto had his devil fruit powers, that would be the one man to walk away with his life. Ingram-san. Vivi began as the men disappeared down the street, tears rolling down her eyes. It hurts. Ingram wasted no time rushing over to Vivi and looking her over. Quickly spotting a large gash on her arm. Just a little scratch, Vivi-sama, but I'm proud at how brave you were. Your father would have been proud if he saw how you acted. The man spoke softly, trying to find a way to stop Vivi's bleeding. Here, take this. Naruto spoke up, holding the bandages he had kept from when he was branded out to Ingram. Put these on her, it should soak up the blood and prevent infection. Thank you, Naruto-kun, Ingram said before taking the bandages and begging to work on wrapping Vivi's arm. Konohamaru rushed to Vivi's side and looked to his friend with concern. Are you alright, Vivi? That man didn't hurt you too bad, did he? The small sav asked, looking her over. Vivi chuckled and rubbed Konohamaru's hair with her free hand. I'm fine, Konohamaru-kun, thank you for your concern. The princess replied, causing Naruto to smile. You know, I'm impressed you didn't act like a spoiled brat. So I guess I can't call you spoiled anymore. Naruto admitted, causing Vivi to be filled with a sense of victory. Though your crying is pretty annoying. So now I think I'm gonna call you Annoying Harem. Konohamaru and Ingram chuckled while Vivi sent Naruto a death glare. Shut it, Whiskers, you're the annoying one. The princess fired back with anger. Naruto started to laugh, and not some fake laugh he would put on for others. For the first time since he had arrived at Mariajoy Silver's, Naruto gave out a honest laugh. When Vivi noticed this, she let a small blush grace her face. She liked to hear Naruto laugh, it was sweet and even made her smile. You might be a jerk sometimes. But I'm starting to see why Konohamaru looks up to you so much. You're not that bad of a guy, Silver's Naruto. And I promise I will help you. Vivi thought to herself. XXXXXXXXX later that night. Naruto had returned to Kaiden's home a few hours ago. When the king had heard what happened to Vivi, he was proud and outraged at the same time. His pride stemmed from how Vivi handled such a serious matter. Though he was angered at how casually Wapol had attacked his daughter. But thanks to Ingram's help, Cobra eventually calmed down. After he was calmed down, that's when Ingram included the King on his plan to help Naruto, and with the blonde's permission, revealed Naruto's true identity. Cobra was a little skeptical at using Vivi in obtaining the key to free Naruto. Though like before, Ingram was able to talk him into it, saying having the son of Silver's Rayleigh and nephew of Red Hair Shanks owing them would pay off. Both men then agreed to use Vivi's injuries as a valid excuse for her absence at dinner. They even went as far as including Pell and Chaka on their plans. Having Pell watch over Vivi, when in reality he would help her steal the key, ensuring that the key would be stolen without a problem. Though while all this was going on, Naruto and Konohamaru both were relaxing in their room, both deep in thought. However, Konohamaru finally broke the silence. Naruto, do you really see me as a brother? Naruto scoffed. What kind of question is that, Baka? Of course I do, why would you ask that? Naruto asked, confused by the slave's words. Konohamaru looked to the ceiling of their room. It's just you keep a lot bottled up and you don't tell me much about how you're feeling. Then I think of our escape plans. I don't even know what they are or where we are going after we escape. If there is even a we. You could just abandon M. Naruto stopped Konohamaru's speech by flicking his forehead. You're such a baka, I would never abandon you. When I escape, you are coming with me to where I live. We will train together, and when I turn 17, me and you will start the Fujin Pirates. Naruto explained, as he started to stretch. Though if you wanna know my escape plans, I'll tell you. Konohamaru leaned closer to Naruto, whose eyes shifted into a darkened hard gaze, displaying his pent-up anger to the younger boy. I'm going to free every slave I can and kill as many celestial dragons as I find along the way. Especially Kaden and Kozen, I will make their deaths painful. Then after that we will just leave, after all I can fly. Naruto summarized, causing Konohamaru's eyes to widen. KKKK. Kill Kaden and Kozen. The small slave mumbled in shock. Naruto nodded and bent down to Konohamaru's level. Yes, both men are to blame for our suffering. They are to blame for why we don't have mothers. I'm not one for killing, but I will enjoy ending their pathetic existence. So after Vivi and her family leave, we will begin our escape. Konohamaru felt a little sick at his stomach. He always got a dark vibe from Naruto, but he didn't think his brother would commit murder. Ni-chan isn't killing wrong. The small slave asked, surprising Naruto a little. I mean, if start killing people left and right, that makes you no better than Kaden or Kozen. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes. You have a point, Kono, but you're too young to understand what I'm trying to do. The elder sibling replied. Then explain it to me, Naruto ni. The small slave shot back. Fine, I will. Naruto grumbled as he looked at Konohamaru with one eye. I've decided after spending time in this hellhole, I'm going to bring peace to the world. For this to happen, however, bastards like Kaden and Kozen need to die. As long as they are alive and breathing, true peace can never be obtained. Konohamaru looked at his brother with determination. I understand now, Ni-chan, and I will help you. If there is such a thing as true peace, we will find it and seize it. We will stop people from starving. We will ensure no one ever purchases a slave again, and we will make sure a child never knows the pain of losing a mother. Naruto smiled and ruffled Konohamaru's hair, proud of his little brother's words. Before we do that, we both have to get stronger. We will also need a powerful crew of pirates to back us up. Konohamaru giggled. No matter what, you still want to travel the world. The boy pointed out. Since Naruto still wanted to form a pirate crew, Naruto joined in on the laughter and pumped his fist. Hell yeah, I do. Knock knock knock. Naruto turned towards the door, his features turning serious. He waited for a minute and tried to sense who was at the door. Normally he could sense people for miles, but his sea stone cuffs really weakened his haki. However, he was able to sense Vivi and Pell on the other side. Come on in. Naruto called out and watched as the door swung open, revealing a smiling Vivi and her guard. Did you get it? Hello to you too. The princess mumbled, with a twitch in her eye. Naruto rubbed his head and gave an eye smile. Hi. Vivi sighed and tossed a small black object at Naruto. The blonde caught it with ease, quickly recognizing it was the key to his cuffs. It's been so long since I've had these off. Naruto admitted to the group of three surrounding him. I'm just gonna take them off for a little while. Konohamaru, Vivi and Pell watched Naruto unlock each cuff. One before the other, they clicked open and fell to the ground with a clang. When the second cuff was finally released, Naruto was filled with energy. He could feel his Kanbunshoku, Busoshoku, and even his Haoshoku haki running through his body stronger than ever. Then by lifting his palm up, he made a small twister of wind. Vivi and Konohamaru were easily amazed by Blonde's abilities, while Pell showed mild interest. Thank you both, it feels so good to have my strength back again. I actually feel like I'm not some helpless weakling anymore. Naruto spoke sincerely, as he started to slowly levitate. Vivi watched Naruto float in the air with amazement. This wasn't her first time seeing a devil fruit user, but Naruto wasn't like Pell or Chaka. His fruit seemed so much different. You're welcome, Naruto-san, Pell replied, speaking for not only himself, but Vivi as well. I must admit though, I'd never imagined you were a Logia devil fruit eater. That's a very rare type of devil fruit. Naruto nodded as he pushed his hand through Konohamaru, causing the boy to get stars in his eyes. Yeah, I haven't mastered the full extent of my abilities yet. I still have a lot of techniques I'm experimenting with. After I escape, my main goal will be mastering my devil fruit abilities, my Haoshoku haki, and my swordsmanship. Pell raised an eyebrow. He didn't know what Haoshoku haki was, but he did know a few things about sword play. So you are learning to fight with a sword. Maybe you should find me sometime and we could spar. Naruto smirked at the challenge. I would love to spar sometime. After all, my Two-san says his training would make me one of the strongest swordsmen alive, but I have no need for silly titles. I do, however, love a good fight. Pell didn't show it, but he was turning pale. He forgot for a moment about Naruto's father and if the blonde was trained by Silver's Rayleigh. Naruto could be a serious contender for world's strongest swordsman. Damn, Ni-chan, you are too damn cool. Can you shoot lasers out of your eyes too? Konohamaru asked, slightly drooling over his brother's powers. Naruto sighed as he smacked Konohamaru over the head. I'm a wind man, Baka. Why would I have laser eyes? That's just stupid. What do you think, I am some kind of cyborg? Naruto yelled, scolding his little brother. Vivi was broken from her shock when she noticed Naruto strike Konohamaru. "Hey, don't hit poor Konohamaru-kun," the princess shouted, as she slapped Naruto across the face. "Whisker baka." Konohamaru started to laugh at his brother's expense, while Pell merely smiled. But Naruto on the other hand held his red cheek, only able to think one thing. How did she hit me? Hehe, she sure showed you, Ni-chan. Konohamaru giggled, holding his side while he laughed. Vivi placed her hands on her hips. "Damn right I did, and if you don't start being a better brother I'll do it again," the princess warned, causing Pell to snicker. "Come on VVS. Amma, let's leave them alone for the night. You need your sleep since we are departing towards Alabaster in the morning," Pell explained, slowly exiting the room, but stopping to look at Naruto. "Oh, and Naruto-san, a friendly reminder. It would be wise to wear those cuffs for now and hide the key." Naruto nodded. "Don't worry, I already plan on doing so. See you in the morning before you leave, Pell-san," the blonde devil fruit user replied. Pell gave a small smile and walked off. Vivi on the other hand stood in front of Naruto with a smirk. "Alright Whiskers, ready for the second part of my deal? 'Cause I'm only going to tell you this once. And if you don't do what I ask, I'm turning you into Kaden." Vivi spoke sternly, causing Konohamaru to gulp. Naruto on the other hand didn't seem to care. "What, you don't think'll do it?" "No, I don't. I can easily sense you're lying about turning us into Kaden. Though I am curious as to what your final condition was to helping us," Naruto admitted truthfully. Vivi sighed and slumped over. "So much for having my little fun, but anyways, my final condition is this. Once you two escape here, you have to come visit me in Alabaster and tell me all about your travels." Naruto held a hand out. "You have a deal, annoying Haim. I promise when me and Konohamaru get the opportunity, we will visit you in your country," the Dark Prince replied happily. Vivi shook his hand and smiled. "Alright, it's settled then Whiskers, but don't make me wait too long." The princess giggled before breaking contact with the blonde and walking out the room. But before she left completely, Naruto called out to her. "Thank you Vivi, you're not so bad for a princess." The blue-haired noble smiled and waved at the brothers. "Don't mention it Naruto. You're the first prince I've met who I've enjoyed being around." Naruto smiled at Vivi's words as she walked off. Maybe they weren't so different after all. Even though she was a noble princess and he was a pirate prince. XXXXXXXXXX the next morning, Naruto along with Konohamaru and the rest of Kaiden's slaves were all formed in a similar fashion outside Kaiden's home like the day Vivi and the king had arrived. Naruto waited with a smirk as he watched Kaiden escort Cobra towards a carriage. The celestial dragon was happily talking to the man whose daughter helped assure his demise. The blonde slave also noticed Vivi leaning out of the carriage, her eyes directed straight at him. He smiled and mouthed, "See you soon," towards the girl, causing her to smile back. "Ni-chan, I'm going to miss Vivi when she leaves," Konohamaru whispered in a low voice. Naruto looked down to his surrogate brother. "Don't be so down Kono, you'll see her again. For now keep your head up, I won't have one of my subordinates being such a wuss," the older slave teased. "But we never got to say a formal goodbye to her," Konohamaru whined, causing Naruto to give him a small smile. "Saying goodbye is overrated Kono, instead you should focus on escaping and growing stronger. That way next time you see her, you will be a powerful pirate." Konohamaru let his brother's words sink in and looked over to Vivi. She was the second person behind Naruto to show him kindness. She was like his big sister figure. "Yeah, you're right, I need to get stronger. Then next time I see Vivi Nay I can show her how strong I am." Naruto cocked an eyebrow. "Oh Vivi Nay. I don't remember including that brat in our family," the eldest brother pointed out. "Hehe, yeah, but I can tell even though you try to pretend like you don't like Vivi Nay. You actually have a lot of respect for her," the youngest of the two replied. "Plus you're always looking at her for long periods of time and you turn really red. So that has to mean you see her as a friend." Naruto's cheeks turned blood red. Konohamaru didn't understand the true extent of his feelings. Hell, Naruto didn't really understand his own feelings for the princess. He wanted to hate her, but in turn he found himself liking her. "Respect is earned Kono, and maybe she earned mine, but I have an idea. If you really want to say goodbye to annoying Haim, let's give her a Silver's family goodbye." Naruto spoke with a smirk, stepping out of the line of slaves. standing in the wide open where Vivi could easily spot him. Catching on, Konohamaru stepped out besides his brother. Both boys holding their hands high into the air. Oi tilde. Annoying Haim, thanks for everything. Naruto shouted loudly, grinning ear from ear. All the other slaves paled at Naruto's actions. Knowing Kaden wouldn't approve. I can't wait till I get to see you again, Vivi nay. Konohamaru shouted out just as loud as Naruto. Kaden fumed as he looked over to the two grinning children, making a mental note to punish them once the carriage departs. Vivi on the other hand leaned out of the carriage. You're welcome. I hope to see you both again really soon. Pell and Chaka both leaned against their seats within the carriage, smiles on their face. Ingram, much like Vivi, was hanging out of the carriage, showing the man's goofy side. Naruto-san, you and Konohamaru both take care now. Don't do anything foolish. Maybe someday I'll be able to show you around where we live. The man added in, his words not registering with Kozen and Kaden, the latter of whom was too angry to even listen. Naruto grinned ear to ear and looked directly at Vivi. King to himself that he would actually miss having her around. Vivi looked at Naruto with a small smile. We better see each other again, Whiskers. I won't forgive you if you break your promise. Don't worry, annoying Haim, you will see your prince again. Naruto called out, not even caring about the looks Kaden and Kozen was giving him. Vivi blushed at Naruto's words, while her father and 3 guards all snickered. I'll miss you, Baka. So take care of Konohamaru-kun. And if you don't, I'll find you and kill you. The princess ordered, as the carriage started to move. Naruto and Konohamaru both waved to the departing nobles. Kaden already stalking over to the pair. Don't worry, annoying Haim, I already planned to. The blonde pirate to be called out, as the carriage disappeared. Finally seeing Vivi had left. Naruto figured it would take them 30 minutes to depart. He had plenty of time to prepare. Come Konohamaru, let's go inside. The eldest brother proposed, turning his back to Kaden and walking away. Konohamaru nodded and followed after his brother, neither waiting for Kaden to dismiss them. Where in the hell do you think you're going? Kaden shouted with rage. After everything you've done these last few days, then you pull a stunt like that. I am going to beat you senseless. You are going to be begging for your pathetic life. Naruto stopped dead in his tracks, causing Kaden and Kozen to smirk. Clang was the sound of Naruto's cuffs smacking against the ground. That rang across the silent courtyard. That's funny, I was about to tell you similar words. Naruto replied, turning around to face the men. Activating his Haoshoku Haki, causing Kozen and Kaden both to tense up, chills running down their spines. Before they both slipped into unconsciousness and crashed onto the ground. Listen up, Naruto shouted out, speaking to all the slaves. We have served under Kaden for too long. So if you want to escape, you are going to follow my instruction. Because I'm freeing as many slaves as I can. Every single slave looked at Naruto with expressions of joy. None of them questioning the small child. Good, if no one has a problem with my leadership, here is what we will do. In the next 30 minutes we will begin attacking houses and freeing slaves. Tell everyone you free to meet at the South Pier and steal a ship. I will lead all marines and guards to the north end. All the slaves remained silent, while Konohamaru started to tie up Kozen and Kaden, while also removing their helmets. Naruto had already told him the bulk of their plan and he knew his job. Whenever you free someone, tell them this. If they want someone to thank for their salvation, thank Silver's Naruto. Son of the Dark King Silver's Rayleigh. You can all call me Naruto the Dark Prince. The slaves looked at Naruto with different expressions. Some with confusion, others with fear and some with gratitude, but one thing was for sure. They were all going to follow his lead. This will be the biggest rebellion in this shithole since Fisher Tiger. So go into Kaden's home and equip yourself with a weapon. Naruto ordered, grabbing onto his exploding collar and passing through it with his powers. Then find me and I will give you Kaden and Kozen's keys to your collars. The slaves all gave a nod of understanding and ran into the large mansion. Some doing as Naruto said, while others started to steal valuables. The blonde didn't care what they did, however, he merely walked over to his brother and bent down. Our time has finally come, Kono, are you ready? The blonde-haired brother asked. Konohamaru looked up to his brother, letting Naruto see how nervous he was. Are you sure we can make it out of here, Ni-chan? Naruto grabbed Konohamaru's collar and in a second yanked it off. Then by using an impressive show of speed he tossed it into the air, causing the collar to detonate in the sky. Don't worry about it, Kono, your big brother will protect you. So smile, today you are finally free. Konohamaru decided to take his brother's advice. He told him that they would be free and the day has finally come. Thank you, Ni-chan, you promised me we would be free. And you kept your promise. Naruto ruffled the small boy's hair. Of course I did, but let's move these guys somewhere more dramatic. Gotta save the best for last after all. Naruto chuckled, causing Konohamaru to laugh. Tonight the Holy Land Mariajoy was going to be burned down. Tonight Kaden and Kozen were going to die. And tonight Naruto and Konohamaru were going to make their escape. XXXXXXXXXX sundown, with Naruto. It had been a few hours since Naruto had started the liberation of Mariajoy. And already hundreds of slaves have been freed and over a dozen celestial dragons have been slain by Naruto alone. The marines and guards stationed within the city attempted to stop the boy, but they couldn't do a thing. Naruto had rampaged through the city, while slaves ran behind him and burned anything he had passed. The blonde wanted to go after the Gorosei, but sadly the marines seemed to have placed a large amount of forces around the palace where they operated from. So the blonde decided to leave them be. Though after a while Naruto stopped his attack and went to where he left Konohamaru. He had left his surrogate brother on a large building overlooking the water fountain, where Vivi, Ingram, and Konohamaru made the plans to steal the key to his cuffs. During this whole ordeal Konohamaru's only job was to stay out of sight and watch their captors, making sure neither man tried to make an escape before Naruto could get his hands on them, which was something Naruto had been looking forward to all night. So currently the blonde-haired liberator was walking between the two men with a large smile. Hello Kaden, how are you and your shit stain of a son doing? Naruto asked, looking down to the two tied-up men. Are you enjoying the show? You can thank me for giving you both such marvelous seats. Kaden gritted his teeth. The entire city was ablaze and he could feel the heat of the fire from where he was, causing him to be covered in sweat and ash. Go to hell, you monster. The man replied, only to earn a kick to the stomach from Naruto. Right down to business, fine, let's play Kaden Tem. You made me watch as someone killed someone close to me. So allow me to do the same. Yuto walked over to the side and grabbed an exploding collar and a chain. Konohamaru watched his brother place the collar around Kozen's neck with no emotion. No, get away from me, you freak. Kozen screamed in fear, as he tried to squirm away. Shut up, Naruto ordered, clamping the collar onto Kozen and punching him in the face, causing the man to fall onto his back. Naruto then gripped firmly onto the chain in hand, which was attached to Kozen's collar. Life is rough, kid, too bad yours is going to be cut short. Do you remember those words, Kozen? You told me that when you tried to kill me. You're about to regret not killing me. No, please, I beg of you, stop this. Naruto stomped down onto Kozen's face, stopping the man from speaking. Then using his haki, Naruto turned his leg black and kicked Kozen hard in the chest, breaking a few ribs and sending him rolling off the rooftop. Kaden watched his son fall off the roof and then looked over to the chain. It was quickly being pulled down with his son, losing its length at a rapid pace. Before long the chain reached its max length and for a moment stopped moving thanks to Naruto, who was holding onto the other end, but within a second, a loud explosion went off and the building shook, signaling that Kozen was dead. You bastard! Kaden yelled out in rage. He didn't show it, but deep down he did care for his only child. Naruto casted the chain off of the building. Then without skipping a beat, a twister of wind carried Kaden, Konohamaru and himself off of the building, taking them down to the water fountain below, where Kozen's mangled corpse waited for them. Konohamaru looked away. The sight of Kozen's body was too much for him to bear. Naruto on the other hand grabbed Kaden by the hair and dragged him towards the water fountain. How does it feel, Kaden? Naruto began as he dunked the man's head in the water, leaving his head submerged and his body flailing, but after a moment Naruto pulled him out. Knowing you are going to die. Kaden coughed up some water and began to pant. Please stop this, I beg of you. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I have learned my lesson, so please spare me. Naruto scowled. You are begging the wrong person for forgiveness, Kaden. Would you like to know why? Naruto then dunked Kaden's head back into the water, only to pull him out moments later. See, when you forgive someone, it's like saying what they did to you never happened. Like the pain they caused you was meaningless. I'm going to tell you right now, Kaden. Beg all you want, but you are going to die. Please, I'll give you whatever you want. Naruto stopped the man from speaking by shoving his head into the water. Though Naruto quickly pulled the man's head out once more. You know what makes drowning one of the worst ways to die, Kaden? See, you can fight death by holding your breath and trying to survive, but eventually you will have to give up and swallow the water around you. That is what makes drowning horrible. It's one of the only forms of death where you have to accept your fate and inhale the water. Saying this, Naruto shoved Kaden down into the water. So quit struggling and accept your death. Kaden attempted to fight the blonde child's hold, but Naruto was too strong. Eventually Kaden started to slow down before eventually his movements stopped, showing Naruto he was dead. Good riddance. Naruto growled before spitting on the man's lifeless corpse. Come on, Kono, let's get out of here. Konohamaru looked at his brother with a small amount of fear. His body shaking terribly. Naruto saw this and walked over to the boy and wrapped him into a hug. I'm sorry you had to see that, Kono, but like I said, in a world of peace, men like those two cannot be allowed to live. Though I guess I'll my own personal feelings take over as well. Konohamaru returned the hug. Please, Ni-chan, don't do that again. I don't like it when you are like that, it's scary. I like it when you are happy and nice. The small boy replied. I know you are not a killer, so please don't turn into one. Start acting like my Ni-chan. Naruto smiled and poked Konohamaru on the head. You have my word, Kono. I will only take a life to protect my loved ones. I will not turn into a psychopath who loves killing. Konohamaru seemed to accept the answer, but the sound of guns clicking grabbed his attention. There he is. He's the monster who started all this. And look, he's killed even more celestial dragons. Prepare yourself, men, he's a devil fruit user. Naruto looked over his shoulder and noticed a group of marines. All of which were pointing rifles at him and Konohamaru. You know I have a name and you should remember it. It's Silver's Naruto, the Dark Prince and son of Silver's Rayleigh. Now run away with your lives and tell your superiors this. Soon I will turn the world upside down and start a new era. An era of peace. Naruto shouted, a large wind blowing around him. Then almost instantly Naruto and Konohamaru disappeared in a twister of wind. The Marines dropped their guns, all thinking the same thing. They had to inform HQ, the second coming of the Dark King had revealed himself. While the Marines scattered throughout the city, Naruto was flying high above the burning buildings and streets. Konohamaru riding happily on his back. So Ni-chan, what do we do now? The younger brother asked. Naruto gave a small smile. We fly home, Kono. We fly home, he replied, heading towards the north, setting his destination for the Sabayati archipelago. XXXXXXXXX. One day later. Naruto was exhausted. He had been flying for well over a day now and he was begging to lose his strength. He didn't know how much longer he could go on. He needed to rest and also he needed some food and water. Though there wasn't anything he could do, considering they were flying over the ocean. Suddenly Naruto started to descend at a rapid pace, alarming Konohamaru. Ni-chan, are you okay? The brown-haired boy asked. Worry laced within his voice. Naruto gave grunt of pain and started to float higher. I'm starting to lose strength and I don't know how far we are from land. The eldest brother admitted. What should we do, Ni-chan? You can't swim and I won't be able to swim and carry you. I'm going to search for a place to land. Naruto replied. Naruto then closed his eyes and reached out with his Kanbunshoku haki. This was always his strongest of his three hakis, as his father said his reach in being able to locate people was amazing. So Naruto thought maybe he could sense an island or ship close by. Found one, Naruto declared as he moved to the left. There is a ship a mile in that direction. I don't care who's on it. We are landing on it and if comes down to it we will fight to take it. Alright Ni-chan, I'll back you up the best I can. Konohamaru replied, as he felt Naruto pick up speed. Naruto flew as quickly as he could, trying to reach the ship he sensed earlier. Within a few minutes Naruto spotted a large ship with an unfamiliar Jolly Roger. A pirate ship. The blonde mumbled as he started to feel lightheaded. Naruto's vision started to blur as he floated down to the ship. Though before he could land, he passed out and crashed onto the deck. Konohamaru looked to his brother with worry. ignoring the crew of men who started to surround him and Naruto. XXXXXXXXXX few hours later. Naruto's eyes shot open and he jerked upwards, quickly noticing he was in a bed and his shirt had been removed, showing off his chest and the mark Kaden had branded on his chest. I see you are finally awake. A calm and unfamiliar voice made himself known. Naruto looked to the corner of the room where an unfamiliar individual stood. He was a large blue whale shark fishman, with a stocky build similar to that of a sumo wrestler and a face which sported two large tusk-like fangs and a scar across his eye. He also had long, two-toned black hair, with two long stripes, colored gold coming from the ROTS over his forehead and trailing down the back, into a topknot. The man was wearing a traditional kimono, with a green floral pattern. The last thing Naruto noticed was the mark on his chest, which resembled a sun. Swearing to himself he has seen that mark before. Who are you and where is Konohamaru? Naruto demanded, his left arm turning into wind. The man took notice of Naruto's arm and noted he was a devil fruit user. Your little brother is fine, he is safe and on the deck of the ship. My men were skeptical of helping two human children. After all last time we did, it didn't end well for us. But your brother told us where you came from and what you did. So I issued an order that we would help you. Naruto nodded. And for that you have my thanks, but that didn't fully answer my question. I'm already aware I am on a pirate ship and I will assume you are the captain. So tell me what is your name? The fishman chuckled. It's polite to introduce yourself first. Fine, my name is Silver's Naruto. Now tell me what is your name? The Dark Prince demanded. Oh, you know that's the same last name as a pretty dangerous pirate. The fishman replied. Naruto rolled his eyes. I'm aware ho. Dangerous people believe my 2 san is, but tell me already who are you? The man was a little taken back. He was harboring the children of Silver's Rayleigh, both of whom had the marks of slaves. My name is Jinbei and I am captain of the Sun Pirates. The now named Jinbei introduced. Well Jinbei, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, but now I'd like to request a favor. Naruto admitted as he rose out of the bed he was in. Could you help me and my brother reach the Sabayati archipelago? I would like to return home. Jinbei stroked his beard. On one condition, you tell me how the children of Silver's Rayleigh ended up slaves. The fishman replied. Naruto sat down against the bed and decided to let everything out. There was no use in keeping secrets, so he told Jinbei everything from his mother's death and his capture, to meeting Vivi and escaping. Finally then closing off to how he killed Kaden and Kozen and freed the slaves of Mariajoy. And after that we flew towards home, but I got exhausted. So I sensed you and your crew and landed here. Naruto explained, wrapping his story up. Jinbei seemed to think to himself for a moment. So do you plan to take vengeance against the man who killed your mother? Jinbei asked, gauging Naruto's reaction. Yes, but not for the reasons you think. I'm not after something silly like revenge. I'm going to kill that man because he is a bastard. No man of justice would kill a defenseless mother. So for my world of peace to be achieved he must die. Naruto explained, being truthfully in his words. Jinbei nodded, so far he was starting to like the boy. I like your answer. But tell me, in this world of peace you want, how would you see fishmen? Would they be nothing but lowly creatures for you to use? What kind of dumb answer is that? Fishmen are just like humans. We share the same blood and we breathe the same air. I see no difference in either race. Naruto replied sternly, earning Jinbei's full respect then and there. I like your attitude, boy, so I will help you and your brother reach the Sabayati archipelago and then some. Jinbei revealed as he walked over to Naruto and pointed to his mark. I can remove the last shred of memory of your time as a slave. Naruto's eyes grew wide. Whatever it is, I'll do it. The blonde replied without hesitation. Jinbei looked at Naruto with a serious gaze. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, Naruto. It will hurt, since we are going to brand over the mark and give you this one. Jinbei pointed to his chest. This is the mark of freedom and is something Fisher Tiger created. It was a way to see, completely erase any evidence that anyone in his crew was a slave, while at the same time not letting any members of the crew know who was slaves and who wasn't. This mark united us as one. Naruto raised his eyebrow. So if I accept your mark, one must join your crew? The blonde child asked, but Jinbei shook his head. No, think of it more as a mark of friendship. showing that you are allies with the Sun Pirates. The large fishman explained. All right Jinbei, I accept your offer and thank you for your kindness. The Dark Prince replied, right before his stomach growled. Ha ha ha, let's get some food in you. Then we will fix that mark on your chest, and if he would like, fix the one on Konohamaru as well. Jinbei proposed as a walk towards the door. Naruto followed after the man, thinking how things were finally starting to look up for him and Konohamaru. This was the beginning of his life of freedom. XXXXXXXXX 2 days later. It has been 2 days since Naruto had started to travel with the Sun Pirates. Since his time together with the fishmen, Naruto had actually started to grow on the crew and they accepted him. Some because they knew about the hardships of being a slave. Others because of how Naruto acted around the crew. Meaning he didn't judge them for who they were. Though Naruto's favorite thing about being with the Sun Pirates was when he and Konohamaru both had their marks covered over, now causing both boys to proudly sport the insignia of the Sun Pirates on their chests. Unfortunately, Naruto's time with the Sun Pirates was drawing to an end. Since the group of pirates was hurriedly escorting him and Konohamaru both to Grove 13, where the blonde-haired child knew his aunt would be. Are you excited to be returning home? Jinbei asked, looking down to Naruto. Naruto grinned as he looked around Grove 12. I know that I haven't been gone for that long, but it feels like I've been away for years. I really have missed this place. Konohamaru walked by Naruto and was amazed by everything he saw. Look at those bubbles, Ni-chan. And those trees are so big. The small boy shouted, enjoying his first time in a new island. Naruto laughed. If you think this place is cool, we should go to Skypia. It's an island that floats in the sky that my two-san told me about. Naruto revealed, causing Konohamaru's eyes to widen. Really, could we go see it? The smaller of the two asked, jumping up and down with excitement. Naruto and Jinbei laughed. Maybe, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, Kono. The eldest brother replied. Let's focus on getting home first. Jinbei smiled and looked forward, spotting a small shack. Is that your aunt's bar, Naruto? The fishman asked, spotting a tree with the number 13. Naruto let a grin pass his lips and he ran forward. Haha, I'll take that as a yes. Jinbei laughed, as he, Konohamaru and the Sun Pirates followed the blonde. Naruto approached the bar and noticed something. It was his aunt, but the odd thing was that she was on her knees, praying in front of a large cross-shaped tombstone. Suddenly Naruto started to slow down. Eventually he was slowly walking towards his unsuspecting aunt. Aunt Shaki. Naruto called out, causing the woman to flinch. She easily recognized the voice. Turning around, Shaki was greeted with the sight of her smiling godson, who was standing happily in front of another smiling boy and a group of fishmen. Naruto. The woman cried as she lunged after the boy and brought him into a hug. I can't believe it's you. A friend told me what happened to you and Kushi-chan. He helped me bury your mother. I'm so sorry. Naruto latched onto his surrogate aunt. No need to apologize, I'm sure you've been a mess throughout the time I've been gone. Shaki nodded. I knew where you were, but I couldn't get in contact with your father or uncle. I'm so sorry, Naruto. I tried everything I could to help you. Naruto smiled, tears slowly leaking out of his eyes. Like I said, Aunt Shaki, it is fine. You did everything you could and that's all that matters. I'm still alive and healthy and I even made some friends. Naruto then looked behind his aunt, his voice cracking. Is that where you buried her? Shaki broke the hug and nodded. I'll leave you alone for a moment. Shaki explained, allowing her godson to mourn his mother. Naruto walked slowly over the tombstone and ran his hands over his mother's name. Tears now freely flowing out his eyes as he fell to his knees. I'm sorry, I was too weak. I let my anger cloud my judgment and I didn't even put up a proper fight. I'm supposed to be some fighting prodigy. But I couldn't even protect you. I'm so sorry, Ka-chan. But I'm going to promise you that I'll never lose a fight or a loved one again. Jinbei walked over to Naruto and knelt down, silently paying his respects to Kushina. That's a pretty bold promise, but if you ever need anything, call on the Sun Pirates, we will stand by your side. The warlord spoke truthfully. I know you lost your mother. But always remember about what remains. Naruto nodded as he continued to cry. I still have the rest of my family and my friends. The blonde admitted, as for the first time in weeks. Silver's N. Naruto allowed himself to cry over his mother and let his emotions out. Jinbei placed his hand onto Naruto and comforted his young friend. All the while Konohamaru stood by and watched his surrogate brother. Shaki ran into her bar for a moment to give Naruto some space. After a moment Naruto's tears started to dry and he stood up. Thank you everyone for everything that you have done for me and Kono. I'm in debt to a lot of people and I would like to make it up to you all. Jinbei patted Naruto on the head. Don't sweat it, maybe one day I'll call for your help. Though for now enjoy your freedom. The large fishman replied slowly walking away. Come on men, let's get back out to sea. Yes captain. The Sun Pirates shouted together, quickly following after their leader. Konohamaru ran up to Naruto and smiled. So we finally made it home Ni-chan. The small boy spoke happily, because for the first time he had a home of his own. Naruto wrapped an arm around Konohamaru and started to walk. Yeah, let's go explain everything that happened to Aunt Shaki. The eldest boy proposed walking towards the bar. XXXXXXXXX. Few hours later. Naruto was sitting quietly on a barstool by Konohamaru. Boys had just finished explaining everything that had happened over the past couple of weeks. Shaki seemed to accept everything that Naruto had decided to do. Except for liberating the slaves inside of Mariajoy. She knew his actions inside the capital would gain the world government's attention, but what was done was done. She was just glad he was alive. However, Shaki appeared off like she was holding something in. This odd behavior was easily picked up on by Naruto. Hey Aunt Shaki, what's the matter? The blonde-haired pirate asked. I can tell you have been a little off recently. Shaki sighed as she grabbed a cigarette. The man who killed your mother, my friend told me his name was Sakazuki. Am I correct? Naruto tensed up at the name, proving Shaki correct, but Naruto still nodded. Yes, what about him? Naruto asked, a mixture of confusion and anger in his voice. Shaki placed a newspaper onto the counter. Well, 2 weeks ago, a vice admiral by the name of Sakazuki took his own life. The barkeep informed, causing Naruto's eyes to widen as he grabbed the paper. Apparently he was stripped of his title by the fleet admiral. So because he had nothing else to live for he committed suicide. Naruto couldn't believe his eyes, everything his aunt had said was right there in paper and ink. Sakazuki, that bastard marine who had killed his mother, was dead. So everyone who was involved with Ka-chan's death is dead. I guess she can rest in peace knowing the men responsible for her death are dead. Naruto spoke mainly to himself, as he was taking the news surprisingly well. You're not upset that you didn't get to be the one to kill him? Shaki asked, looking at her godson with a critical eye. No, he is dead and the world is better for it. That is all that matters to me. Naruto replied in a calm voice. Shaki reached down under the counter and grabbed something. That's good to hear, but here I'm sure you have missed this. The raven-haired beauty explained, holding up Naruto's sword. It's Kurama. Naruto shouted out, grabbing his sword and quickly unsheathing it. Whoa Ni-chan, that's a pretty kick-ass sword. Konohamaru praised, as he watched Naruto run through some stances. I have missed holding a sword in my hands. And there is no better sword than Kurama. Naruto replied, placing his katana back into its sheath. Shaki smiled and was about to speak. But the sound of the front door opening grabbed her attention. When she saw who had entered her bar, the mood in the place instantly dropped. Rayleigh, the female muttered. Naruto turned around and almost dropped his sword. Standing only a few feet away was his father. A scrunched-up piece of paper in his hand and a frown on his face. "Tu-chan!" Naruto screamed, rushing the man and quickly bringing the man into a hug. Rayleigh bent down and rubbed a hand through Naruto's hair. My little maelstrom, I'm so glad you are okay. I stopped by in the town and found this and it filled me with worry. But I was able to sense you were with Shaki. So I came here as quickly as possible. Naruto backed away and took the piece of paper out of his father's hand. What the hell is this? Naruto shouted, unable to fathom what he was looking at. What he was looking at was a wanted poster. With the picture of a blonde-haired child standing around dead celestial dragons and burning buildings. This was his wanted poster and it read, Wanted dead or alive, Silver's Naruto aka the Dark Prince. Bounty 400 million belly. Rayleigh grabbed his son's shoulders and gave him a soft gaze. Naruto, what happened? Why can't I sense Kushina-chan anywhere? And why do you have a bounty on your head? Naruto looked down. Take a seat 2-chan, we have a lot to talk about. XXXXXXXXX 1 week later. It had been 1 week since Rayleigh had returned home. Like Naruto had said, him and his father had talked about a lot. Naruto explained everything from Kushina's death to his time as a slave. Then he went into detail about meeting Konohamaru and Vivi, explaining to his father everything that led up to his escape and the events that had given him his first bounty. Naruto also explained how the 3 men involved with Kushina's death were all dead. This seemed to please Rayleigh as his wife was avenged. So eventually, after mourning over the love of his life, the ex-pirate tried to move on. He started to train Naruto even harder as the boy requested him to do so. Rayleigh even began training Konohamaru, who had become his adopted son. This made Konohamaru extremely happy, because he finally found the love of a parent. Though the only thing Rayleigh was able to teach Konohamaru was the basics of the 2 most common forms of haki. He said the boy had potential to be great, but he needed a lot of work. Through by far the biggest thing that occurred was Rayleigh making contact with Shanks, informing the man of the fate that befell his older sister. Shanks was instantly filled with rage and wanted to avenge his sister. But the Dark King quickly told him there was no one left alive for him to seek vengeance on. So instead he told the man about Naruto's time as a slave. Rayleigh even told his brother-in-law how Naruto blamed himself for Kushina's death. So the red-haired Uzumaki decided to travel to the Sabayati archipelago to speak with his nephew personally. This all happened 1 week ago, and today marks the day which Shanks would arrive. Currently Naruto was waiting outside Shaki's bar. He was fiddling with Kurama while he waited for his uncle, who he could sense was approaching. Konohamaru on the other hand was off to the side sparring with Rayleigh. Or to be more precise, getting his ass handed to him by Rayleigh. Come on Konohamaru-kun, you must be faster than that. The silver-haired father chuckled, knocking Konohamaru's legs out from under him. Konohamaru fell onto his back and growled, "I am fast, you're just too damn good." The youngest son shouted out. Naruto smirked as he watched his father and brother spar. Kushina would have also got some enjoyment out of watching them go at it. Naruto looked down sadly, but instantly shot his head up. "They are here," Naruto announced. Konohamaru and Rayleigh relaxed and looked over, quickly spotting a powerful-looking man approaching with a band of pirates behind him. "Shanks," Rayleigh called out, waving towards the man. Shanks gave an ode to his old crewmate and walked over to Kushina's grave, slowly laying down a small assortment of flowers down. Naruto watched his uncle with interest before looking at the pirates around him. The blonde pirate could see Ben Beckman, Lucky Roo and even Yasop, all 3 of whom were some of his uncle's most powerful subordinates. Naruto stood up and walked over to his uncle, who was already starting to rise to his feet. "Naruto, let's talk for a moment," the red-haired pirate offered, motioning for Naruto to follow him. Naruto obeyed and walked after his uncle, following him as he walked away from the crowd of pirates. Then by turning his head, Naruto watched the red-hair pirates interact with his family. Some went into the bar for a drink, then went to speak with his father and Yasop Star Ted to show Konohamaru his rifle and pistol. He could see his brother had a real interest in firearms. Turning his attention back to Shanks, Naruto was the first one to speak. "So uncle, what would you like to talk about?" Shanks turned to face Naruto and sighed. "Your father told me everything that happened. You shouldn't blame yourself for what happened to Kushina. The man you fought was stronger physically and he had more battle experience. There was no way you could have won." Naruto gritted his teeth and gripped his fist. "That doesn't matter, I didn't even put up a good fight. Losing again. Saint, that man showed me how much I have to improve." The blonde-haired devil fruit user replied. "Yes, I agree with you, but doing nothing except training won't be enough. You need real battle experience. So I've come to offer you a chance to earn some," Shanks revealed, giving his nephew a smirk. "You and your little adopted brother will join my crew. We can protect you since your bounty is so high, and we can help give you fighting experience." Naruto growled. "I already told you I'm forming my own pirate crew," the blonde-haired child yelled out. "Yes, I know, and don't worry, you will only travel with me and my crew until you're 17. Then you can go off and form your own crew." Shanks bent down and placed his one hand on Naruto's shoulder. "You are my precious nephew and the embodiment of my sister. I don't want anything happening to you. So I'm going to train you to become the strongest pirate that I can. Naruto thought over his uncle's words, not knowing what to do. Even if I say yes, T makes you think Tu-chan will agree to let me go? And what about Konohamaru, what makes you think he will want to go too? Ben and Yasop are already talking it over with them. I'm sure they will both say yes. You and Konohamaru need to become stronger and I'm giving you the opportunity to do so. The red-haired uncle replied. Naruto looked over to Kushina's tombstone, remembering the promise he made over that grave. He needed to grow stronger and now he has an opportunity to do so. Fine Uncle Shanks, I accept your offer. Shanks smiled and brought Naruto into a hug. Welcome to the red-haired pirate's fish cake. That's it for today, I will stop here. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you please consider subscribe and make sure to hit that like button, share with your friends and don't forget to check out my Patreon. Details in description.